The story opens with an emblem representing the royal class, and the sun shines brightly on the building where this emblem is adorned. Inside the temple, there is a special class with a curriculum designed to cultivate talents in various fields for the benefit of the empire, and only geniuses are permitted to enter. A group of students, 2 girls and 2 boys, are looking at the reader. These students have extraordinary abilities and talents. They have boundless opportunities. A blond man sits on the fountain with his arms crossed, and a pink-haired student admires him. Such students form part of an elite society, and this is what the royal class represents. A silver-haired man with glasses is reading a list and comments that the 11th entry in Class A is wrong. Someone asks why. The blond boy stands up, fixing his hair, while others whisper, wondering if this is the one with unlimited potential and if he managed to enter the royal class solely because of his abilities. They add that this is the first time they have seen something like this. Meanwhile, our boy, being confused, stands up after hearing congratulations for entering the royal class, mentally questioning why he managed to get into this hell. In the library, our boy reflects that he had already been looked down upon since he was reborn as a 17-year-old son of the demon king, who is doomed for his past sin. Being over 30 in spirit, he is put in a position where he has to fight for survival while attending the academy. The burning of the academy building reveals to the hero that this world is destined for ruination. A brown-haired boy and a black-haired boy with an expression of discontent stand, looking at the reader. In the background are a girl and a boy scratching his head. Our boy understands that he has to survive among people who will do everything in their power to destroy him. Our boy thinks he has no choice but to become stronger to survive. To do this, he must gain achievement points. Changing memories flash through our boy's mind. A red-haired demon sitting on a throne expressionlessly, and a girl in uniform with an expressionless look pointing her sword at the reader. This is the novel our boy has written. System windows appear to proclaim a new event, and another declares that our boy must do all in his power to survive the novel's events. A Gothic cracked castle appears, symbolizing the protracted war between the demon world and human beings, which sealed the fate of both races. A man in shining armor with his sword ready to strike attacks a demon in dark robes. The great clash of the 2 races ended with the death of the demon king, Valier, and with the demon king's death came peace. 3 people sit before priests who are receiving awards, acknowledging the empire's gigantic efforts during the long and arduous war. The academy, familiarly called the temple, was established with the aim of finding talents and heroes. It was intended to be a place where brilliant people from all over the empire would gather. It was said that the royal class was a special caste in such a group of students. It included geniuses among geniuses. In this class, Ludwig was a guy with a hot temper and a high sense of justice, but always in last place. This web novel, published weekly, falls under the fantasy genre. According to the description, it is an action-packed fantasy novel set in the temple. However, among all the hate comments, one comment bluntly states that the novel is boring and childish. Among them is one suggesting that the author should quit writing. Another commenter describes the work as dull and boring, complaining about the stupidity of the girls in love with the main character. One commenter even offers the author basic storytelling advice. Someone starts typing a new comment, but the keyboard seems to be stuck on the last letter, and the message is never sent. Our boy slumped over the keyboard, with his face pressed against it. Our boy dies while reading hate comments on his novel that cause high blood pressure, and his soul looks down at his ghostly body. A pink-haired girl in business attire hands him the description of his death and begins to explain that he was brought down by cardiac arrest due to a sudden peak in blood pressure. The pink-haired girl is the agent of the Soul Management Department Grim Reaper named Kim. Kim handed over the document to our boy to confirm it. Looking around, he asks if he has really died and starts to reflect, realizing that he succumbed to high blood pressure while reading hateful comments. Kim becomes angry and points at our boy and sternly tells him to stop asking questions. Our boy admits that she must be right, and he doesn't want to hear it, but he has to face reality. As he recalls his vision fading before his last breath, he mentally complains about how stupid his death was. The Reaper tells him to stop wasting time and make his decision because she has much work to do. Our boy is still in shock from his unexpected death and grows more frustrated about being forced to make a strange decision so soon. The Reaper has explained that when someone dies, they need to first atone for their major sins in order to go to heaven. Our boy looks at the document with sadness as he reads about his worst sins that are endlessly releasing sequels to his novel and writing stories with terrible scripts. Immersed in his memories, he recalls sitting at his computer as our boy was a writer. He reflects on how irresponsibly he published chapters carelessly, and how, despite that, he had the audacity to write a new novel and release it from another account. Our boy acknowledges that everybody atones in their own different ways. Our boy asks Reaper if this even counts as a sin, while internally, he concedes that there is nothing to be proud of in his writing habits, but still tries to defend himself. Kim calmly explains that, while his sin may seem small when considering its impact on one person, it became significant because it happened repeatedly and affected many people. Our boy wonders, what kind of system is this? In the end, being an irresponsible writer, our boy had to atone for his sins. For the absolution of his sins, he must choose one of his completed novels, be reborn as one of its heroes, and stay alive until the very end. Filled with rage when he first hears what is in store for him, he wants to scream. In response, with a smile on her face, the Reaper asks if her offer is not better than spending eternity in hell. She says further that, since these are his own novels, he should know all that will happen, so, in truth, this would be a bonus and not punishment. Our boy, with a worried expression, responds that it is up to the novel. Our boy realizes that no matter how hard he tries to pick a good novel, all his novels are far from happy endings. A list of completed works appears. Our boy's #1 novel on the list is City of the Dead. It is a story about a zombie apocalypse where he will be eaten in less than a day. Survival in Ruined World is the second work. It is a story of survival in an apocalyptic world. Our boy realizes he has nothing to do with it, as he is already metaphorically dead upon merely reading the comments of haters on the internet. A Hunter Becomes a Manager is the third work, a modern action story about hunters. Our boy thinks that he will be torn apart within the first chapter. Somehow the game became reality, but my occupation is cleaner. The fourth book, which is a fantasy story whose description says 90% of mankind will die out through the invasion process of reality with the game, and our boy realizes that he will be one of them. Ripping his eyes away from the list, he glanced glumly to the side, realizing it didn't matter that these were his novels because he would die anyway. Again, staring at the list, our boy wonders whether he really has no other option. The fifth novel, The Death of the Demon King, is an ordinary fantasy story about learning at the academy. This is the only relatively normal novel among his depressive efforts. Our boy realizes that this is the best option for now, neglecting the fact that this novel is the cause of his death. Our boy thinks that it is just a cute, everyday story after the war, with much lower chances of dying, as the final boss dies at the very beginning of the story, followed by events after that. Our boy understands that it's a better choice. Our boy thinks that since everything will be decided randomly, he shouldn't hope to get the role of the main character. He just needs to become a student. Our boy tries to remember why his novel failed and realizes that something is wrong with the second part. The Reaper turns to him, saying that if he is going to drag things out, she will make the choice for him. She adds that her personal favorite is the City of the Dead. Abruptly turning around, he hands her the form and screams that he chose the death of the Demon King. The Reaper applauds and sends the man best wishes. She claps her hands, and our boy changes into a young man with red hair and horns and stands in the center of a lavishly decorated office. His face is impassive as he tries to comprehend what is happening, as he was just in his room, and now he is in an extravagant place. Our boy touches his horns and clothes with wonder. Our boy looks at the ceiling, realizing that he really got into his novel. He curses Kim for throwing him into this situation without any explanation. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by a system window that appears in front of his face, forcing him to recoil in surprise and to think that it is a cliché development. The status window indicates that his age is 17, his stats range from F to C, his race is an archdemon, and his abilities include the power of a demon. His name is Valor Jr. Our boy, surrounded by questions, wondering what it means to be an archdemon and who's Valor Jr. When our boy realizes what it means, he screams with disagreement. Something suddenly pulls him out of his thoughts. He is startled and peers toward the window where some noise is coming from behind it. A brilliant yellow light falls across his face as he wonders what the noise is. A shell crashes into the castle and tears a tremendous part of it asunder. Screaming in agony, our boy is tossed aside by the walls, shards of glass, stone, and debris falling from the ceiling. Lying on the ground in a concussed state, struggling to his feet, our boy looks up and wonders what kind of explosion just occurred. A system window accompanied by its characteristic chime appears in front of him. He looks at it and sees that the prologue event has started. It says that the demon army is going to be destroyed, and he cannot do anything about it. The task is to get out of the castle of the Demon King. There is a reward of 100 achievement points for it. Something frightens him. He looks up and screams to see the defeated ogre hanging from the ceiling. He notices many monsters who have been defeated fallen in the hallway. Concluding that he actually did get reborn in his novel, The Death of the Demon King, our boy runs down the corridor. He knows being chosen at random has brought him straight into the Demon King's castle as a character that was never in the novel. At just 17 years old, he has no fighting skills and has been reborn where the Demon King dies at the very beginning. Crying and screaming, he curses while a fireball explodes behind him. He now realizes that he is the prince of the destroyed Demon Kingdom. Our boy keeps running, gasping for breath and being tired. The ceiling begins to collapse under the force of the bombardment. Our boy shows his disappointment, saying the Reaper was a scammer. Our boy remembers Kim saying that he should take it as a reward as he already knew the story of the novel. Our boy screams, asking why he became the son of the Demon King. Our boy realizes that the collapse of the temple is because the hero and the Demon King are in the middle of a final battle. These are the prologue scenes from his novel that he wrote himself. In this scene, both of them will meet their end, and the war will end with human victory. In that moment of desperation, our boy understands that, since he has become the Demon King, he will inevitably die once caught. Wiping off the sweat from his face, our boy thinks about how he should survive this situation. Glancing over at the system window floating behind him, he realizes it's following him, although such a system isn't in the original novel. By the cliched status window format, he knows that the system window displays his characteristics. Although he doesn't understand the exact standards, he can say that his characteristics of him are not great. Our boy thinks being the final boss, he could have run away or tried to reach an agreement, and that anything would have been better than this. Staring at the system window, he realizes that he has no special skills that can help him survive or escape. The only remotely useful skill is his ability to read the language of this world. Panting after another desperate sprint, he looks up and sees a sign written in the language of this world. It reads, "Warehouse." Our boy hopes to find something useful there, but only sees trash. Sorting through a chest, he tosses out a red bottle. Realizing this is why the demon army lost to the Imperial army. A book catches his eye, and our boy realizes it's a magic scroll book that he added to the novel just for characters who couldn't use magic. He frantically flips through the pages. He assures himself there must be a spell that can get him out of this situation. A satisfied smile appears on his face as he finds exactly what he is searching for, the teleportation spell. The system window pops up, confirming its movement magic that transports a person to a specific place. As pieces of the ceiling fall around him, our boy thinks he will be buried alive at this rate. Picking up the book, he shouts that he must get as far away from this place as possible and uses the teleportation spell. The castle is framed against a clear sky. The hero, still clutching the book and standing in confusion and asking why he's still there. A system window appears, notifying him that the spell failed because of the movement of a magical barrier. Our boy starts whining that he doesn't even have time to look for another way out. Sitting in front of the book, its pages still flipping from the fall, he wonders if begging people to save him is all that's left. Then he suddenly notices something, a camouflage. The scene changes to a staircase creaking as someone approaches, and their shadow is visible. Our boy, covering himself with a cloak, transforms into a new form, a young man with brown hair. The status window shows that camouflage is the ability to change one's appearance into another person. Our boy thinks to himself that he doesn't believe disguising himself as a human prisoner will work, but he has to try everything he can. In his head, a comic book plan for getting out of Demon King's castle forms. Step 1. Transform into a human using magic. Step 2. Run into a prison cell. Step 3. being alongside prisoners when the Imperial Army comes to save them. Step 4. Escape while no one is paying attention. Getting saved by the army is the best option for survival for our boy. Our boy starts looking deeper into the prison. He realizes it's eerily quiet and wonders if he has entered the wrong room. Our boy is confronted by a smell that is so potent. His eyes widen, and he puts his hand up to his nose, wondering what the smell could be and wonders if it is the smell of fish, but then suddenly realizes it is the smell of blood. Jumping back in horror, he screams as the terrifying image overwhelms him. Sitting and trying to catch his breath, he screams again, seeing that all prisoners are dead. He questions why they are all dead, as he has never written of something like this in his novel. The novel was supposed to be a regular rom-com. He shivers with fear and thinks if he should run. Suddenly our boy sees someone alive and thinks if it is a survivor. When he goes close, he realizes it's a blonde-haired girl sitting on her knees. The girl is crying next to another woman who looks exactly like her. Our boy, not knowing what to say, thinks that this girl must still be just a child. The girl turns back at him and starts shaking. Our boy states that he too is a prisoner and asks the girl again if she is okay. Our boy glances at the dead woman and assumes she is her relative. He consoles the girl, saying that there is no need to be worried since somebody will come and save them soon. Our boy asks if she minds if they wait together. The girl looks at him suspiciously. Our boy wonders if that is too much to ask and then tries to calm the girl, saying that he himself is scared. Blushing slightly, our boy shows his empty hands to demonstrate his good intentions. He says that since they're in the Demon King's castle, it might be better if they stick together. The girl looks up with a sad expression as if trying to say something. Then she straightens up and begins to shake. Our boy nervously raises his hand, apologizing for his stupid questions. He tries to explain himself, but the blonde-haired girl rubs her eyes, wiping away tears, and tells him that it's fine and offers our boy to sit next to her. Our boy sits beside her and thinks it's a bit awkward. The girl tells him he seems very calm. Our boy replies that he is scared too and thinks to himself that he is truly terrified. If his plans fail, he knows he will be captured and killed. Our boy, stretching out his hand, continues thinking that he doesn't have any other choice, and if it does go wrong, then it can go wrong. He feels something inside his cloak and finds out a pack of crackers. Remembering where he found the pack in his suit, he decided to keep them. Although he isn't hungry, he thinks there might be another use for them. Our boy turns to a girl with a small smile and tells her he recently picked it. Our boy asks the girl if she wants to share it. The girl remains silent for a moment and then decides to take it. After thanking him, she takes a small bite, which makes our boy think that she must be starving, but still why she is taking small bites. Our boy thinks in his mind if the girl doesn't like them, and to make the girl calm, our boy tells her that the Imperial Army will come soon to save them. However, their conversation is interrupted by a noise. Someone screams that they have found the prison. Both of them look in shock, and our boy thinks that the army is here. A bearded man with a soldier appears in front of them. The bearded man, with a furious look on his face, says, "Finally." Our boy shields the girl with his body, nervous because he doesn't understand the strange reactions of these rescuers. For people who've just stumbled upon prisoners, their behavior seems odd. The bearded man in a black suit kneels down and shouts and starts calling the girl Imperial Highness and apologizes to her for not coming early to save her. Our boy becomes surprised at why he is calling her Imperial Highness. The blonde-haired girl is revealed to be Charlotte, the first princess of the Cardia Empire. The system window pops up, informing our boy that the prologue is complete and he has earned 100 achievement points. The flag of the royal army flutters in the wind as knights guard the main tent. Our boy thinks about his luck. Getting out with the princess he had unknowingly ended up with was a good decision. Charlotte calmly cuts a steak with a knife and eats. Our boy continues thinking but gets awkward, realizing how hopelessly desperate his situation is. Our boy reminds himself of the man who bowed before his master and thinks about how he and Charlotte were saved by a noble. Even though he was saved, he was still a demon pretending as a man with a low-ranking spell called camouflage. He worries that if Charlotte's maid uses anti-demon magic, his disguise will be revealed and he'll be doomed. On top of that, Charlotte seems to care about him too much, expressing gratitude because he saved her. Our boy sits with an unsatisfied expression, thinking how Charlotte is giving him too much attention for someone who wants to go quietly. He realizes something strange. Charlotte, A significant character is someone about whom he has never written in his novel. A blue-haired guy bows and asks the princess for forgiveness. He explains that since they are in a military camp, he has done all he can do for her. Charlotte replies saying it's not needed, calling him Lance. Blue-haired guy thanks Charlotte for her understanding. He says that once Duke Solarian arrives, she will be sent to the Imperial Palace immediately. Charlotte smiles sweetly, thanking him again. Charlotte then thanks our boy for helping her in prison, while our boy replies he doesn't think he helped her. Charlotte insists that he helped her a lot, and, as a token of gratitude, she promises to make sure he gets home safely. Charlotte asks our boy where he lives. Struggling to come up with an answer, our boy tries to remember the names of cities or regions, but draws a blank. He feels someone staring at him, and our boy notices the blue-haired guy is drilling him with an angry look. Charlotte, with tears in her eyes, asks how it's possible for him not to remember. Our boy thinks that she is so stupid that she even believes that. Charlotte sadly tells him it hurts to hear that he must have gone through so much. Our boy thinks that it's good for him that she is so naive. Wiping her tears, Charlotte tells our boy not to worry anymore, as she promises she will help him recover his memories. Our boy bows and thanks her. The blue-haired guy protests the promise, but Charlotte responds that she has said it out loud and therefore cannot take back her words. She asks the blue-haired guy if he intends to make her out to be a liar. 9. Defeated, responds that he meant no such thing. Our boy's expression changes into anger as he calls Charlotte a liar in his head, because it is impossible for her to fulfill her promise because she will die soon. In the original novel, there was no description of the prison's conditions. That's why the background story is generated on its own, creating an establishment and likelihood for this world that even our boy doesn't fully understand. He wonders if the princess's existence is one of these possibilities, knowing he can't predict her future since he never wrote about her. However, his thoughts drift to Bertus, the prince he created, a character who would never let competition survive if it stood in the way of his succession to the throne. Smiling unhappily, our boy thanks Charlotte again. This simple-minded girl has no idea what will soon be sent her way. Our boy realizes that his life is a foreclosure, and he isn't even sure of what he could do to save this innocent girl. He feeds his rationalization by convincing himself it would be better for Charlotte to die because he needs himself to live. With clenched fists, our boy curses himself for being pathetic. At this very moment, our boy thinks that he should tell her that her life is at stake. He feels that he can win her trust, and that if anything strange happens, she will help him out. Charlotte exhales, says she thinks she is getting indigestion from eating too much, and asks a blue-haired guy to call a doctor. The blue-haired guy is taken aback and hesitates, but says it is his responsibility to ensure her safety. Charlotte smiles softly and reassures him, asking if he really believes she is in any danger after the news of the Demon King's death. Upon Lance's disappearance, Charlotte shut down her eyelids in distaste. She looked up at our boy with a statement of wanting to start with an apology. Our boy becomes shocked to see Charlotte in a completely different way than before. Charlotte fetched a mug while asking our boy to forgive her. Looking at him seriously, she says that he will die because of her. Our boy, being shocked, asks what she means. He is shocked by her sudden transformation in demeanor. Charlotte takes a sip and explains that she cannot tell too much about the imperial family, but believes that there is a high probability she will be killed in the near future if nothing is done. She looks down and says that her half-brother, Bertus, is likely to be her killer. Charlotte seems displeased as she adds that most of the people in this camp are probably her enemies. She observes that the fact they are holding her captive without letting her go is a clear indication that they are not going to let her deliver her message. An image of a thick cloak comes into our boy's mind as he recalls how Charlotte was covered when she was rescued. He realizes people probably do not know there were survivors among the prisoners of the Demon King's castle. Our boy, being surprised, listens as Charlotte theorizes that they may be waiting for an order to execute her or planning to poison her and claim her body was found in the castle. Charlotte puts the mug down and continues, saying that if she dies, our boy will also be killed to cover their tracks. Our boy and realizes they are both doomed. Our boy nervously asks if they can appeal to the knights for help, considering Charlotte's status. Charlotte, staring ahead sadly, replies that it is useless because she has no one to trust. This surprises our boy, who holds his head in frustration and recalls the blue-haired guy's suspicious behavior and asks if even he cannot be trusted. Realizing their situation is hopeless, our boy concludes they've been put in checkmate. Charlotte, seeing the distress on our boy's face, reassures him not to worry. Charlotte, while smiling, reminds him of her promise to help him recover his memories. She raises her finger confidently and declares that they will escape together. Our boy listens, amazed as Charlotte outlines her plan to distract their enemies. He presses his feet to the ground, realizing there's little time left. Standing up and turning away, he struggles to comprehend the horrors unfolding in this novel. Running out of the tent, our boy thinks that his success and life are in his hands now. Inside another tent, our boy walks around muttering in shock why Charlotte trusted him with this job. Our boy inquires if Charlotte intends to leave when she is reluctant to do it. She crossed her fingers, confirming that the only way they both would survive was to bring Sir Francis with them. Our boy then asks who this Francis is, and Charlotte apologizes for not doing much of an explanation. A close-up of Francis flashes in Ron's mind as Charlotte asks if he remembers the knight who saved them in the Demon King's castle. Our boy admits that he found the knight rather scary. Charlotte explains that Francis is one of the rare representatives of the neutral faction, loyal only to the imperial family. Our boy clarifies that this means Francis is someone Charlotte can trust. Charlotte nods, continuing that it's unlikely Francis is aligned with enemies because, if he were, they would have been killed in the castle. Charlotte starts to describe Francis as a good, loyal knight. Our boy, looking bewildered, comes to understand that Francis may be their last hope for survival. Our boy clutches his fists, telling Charlotte he will be doing exactly as she says. Charlotte thanks our boy for believing in her. She hopes that they will return home safe and sound. Standing up from the table, having a knife clutched in a scary way, declaring it is time to create an escape route through tight security. Our boy, being confused, asks what she means. Charlotte nonchalantly points at herself and mentions that she would act as the bait. Our boy asks if that isn't terribly dangerous, but Charlotte assures him that she will probably be right until the one who decides her fate comes. Reaching out, she takes our boy's hand and advises him to speed up since time is running short. Our boy realizes he is in no position but to join up with her. Charlotte succeeded in distracting the knights for a few precious moments, and our boy left the tent and ran through camp looking for Francis. A man in armor notices our boy and asks who he is. Our boy tells hesitantly that he is looking for Francis. The soldier tells our boy that Francis just left for Demon King's castle, and our boy becomes disappointed because his plan is ruined now. The soldier further tells our boy that Lance, a blue-haired guy, a member of military headquarters, requested Francis to go to the Demon King's castle to clean up the rest of the demons. Our boy realizes that Lance is the knight who was with the princess before and thinks that he might have known the plans of the princess, and that's why Lance made the move immediately. Our boy thinks that he is left with only one way now. The soldier inquires again about what he needs to do with Francis, and our boy replies while screaming that this is important and tells the soldier that Francis's life is in danger. Our boy thinks the soldier will react that they need to rescue Sir Francis immediately. But instead, the soldier asked our boy what he meant by that. This response surprises our boy. The soldier asks our boy to explain it, but our boy explains that he doesn't know the specifics and says that something is happening that involves both Sir Francis and Her Imperial Highness. He further says that for both of their safety, we should bring him back here immediately. Our boy hesitates and says that he obviously won't believe him, but to his surprise, the soldier agrees and says he trusts him. Our boy asks again if he believes him and says that he has given him no reason to believe him. The soldier laughs and says the reason is simple. Our boy looks so stupidly desperate that even a stranger like him can see it. He adds with a grin that he has a gut feeling our boy is telling the truth because Sir Francis predicted this would happen. The soldier explains that Francis told him to stand by and wait because someone might approach him, just as our boy has now done. Our boy feels a chill run down his spine and becomes horrified, wondering if Sir Francis already knows about their plan and if Francis knew what would happen to the princess. Our boy is confused as he thinks if Francis knew it, then why did he leave for the Demon King's castle? Because he should stay here by her side. The soldier offers to take our boy to Francis. When asked if he has ridden a horse before, our boy admits he hasn't. Generously, the soldier assures our boy that his horse is strong enough to carry them both. Without hesitation, he instructs our boy to follow him. The soldier realizes he has not introduced himself yet and tells our boy that his name is Dyrus. As they leave, the blue-haired guy looks at them secretly. Dyrus and our boy ride on horseback. Dyrus grimaces in distaste as he orders the gates to open, yelling to speed up. Our boy looks on in horror, not knowing what demons are doing there. Our boy asks Dyrus about the demons on the roadside. Dyrus replies that they are demon prisoners and reminds him that the war has just ended. He explained that if demons were caught here, they are likely either defeated soldiers or ordinary demons. The demons stand in line as Dyrus continues, stating that they are still exploring areas closer to the castle and that the prisoners will be taken down once they go back to headquarters. Our boy looks back in shock as Dyrus continues, saying that he need not to worry. Our boy thinks to himself that if he had screwed up earlier, he would most likely end up like those demons. The horse brings them to the castle. Dyrus tells our boy that the area is on high alert and instructs him to prepare to dismount. A man with a mustache looks at them in confusion and asks who they are. Dyrus salutes and introduces himself as Lieutenant Dyrus, leader of the 11th Squadron's 3rd Platoon, 1st Troop, 4th Cavalry Regiment. The mustached man acknowledges him and asks what brings him there. Dyrus explains that he brought this boy, our boy, to deliver an important message to Sir Francis. The man with the mustache is taken aback and asks if Dyrus is referring to Sir Francis. Dyrus confirms, adding that since the information is confidential, he personally escorted our boy to deliver it. The man with the mustache says they just received a report that Sir Francis was killed in a battle with the remnants of the demon resistance. Our boy is stunned and asks himself if he indeed heard it right. The mustached man curses the demons, calling Sir Francis' death an incredible loss. Our boy realizes that means no one is left with Charlotte. The man asks if there's anything in the message he should hear, but Dyrus denies it, saying the information was meant only for Francis. The mustached man turns around, tells them he understands, and suggests they leave because this isn't a place for outsiders. Picture of Bertus comes into our boy's mind and reaches a conclusion that Bertus wants Charlotte dead and hence is doing every possible thing. Our boy recalls Charlotte saying that Lance would cover up all traces of her survival, even if it meant killing everyone who knew the truth. Our boy reflects that this is why Bertus targeted Francis because he also knew about Charlotte. Our boy holds his head, trying to think quickly about what to do next. Dyrus calls out to him and says that now is the time for our boy to tell him the whole truth. Dyrus says that the real reason our boy mentioned Francis being in danger should now be revealed. Our boy looks at Dyrus, debating whether to trust him. From the words of Charlotte, our boy knows that most of the military men support Bertus and can't even determine whether the junior officer, Dyrus, can be on his side. Still, our boy had to leave everything up to him. Taking a deep breath, our boy decides and explains everything that happened between them, how he and Charlotte were held hostage, and how Francis saved them. Dyrus says that if everything our boy said is true, then Francis was likely killed by knights rather than demons. Our boy acknowledges that this is probably the case. Dyrus then asks if our boy wants to save the princess now. Placing his hand on his chest, Dyrus declares that he will help them. Our boy is astonished to think that Lieutenant Dyrus would make the offer of helping them out. Dyrus informs him that he belongs to Team Francis, and that assisting his team is the correct call for him to make. Our boy agrees, partly being placated though he could hardly trust this person yet. Dyrus tells our boy that they should run back to the princess as they have nothing to do there at the Demon King's castle. Our boy hesitates and awkwardly suggests that he has a plan. Dyrus raises an eyebrow but agrees, saying rummaging through the Demon King's belongings might be a good idea since they could find something useful to aid their escape. Dyrus observes the mess in the castle and comments that everything seems to have already been looted and turned upside down. Our boy in his thoughts blames himself for the mess and says they might find something useful if they keep looking. Dyrus hypothesizes that the demons had looted the vaults right after the death of the Demon King, who described demons as vile and unscrupulous creatures, but in reality, it was our boy who came there before. Our boy starts searching and finds a teleportation scroll. He holds it up and tells Dyrus that he found something useful. Our boy shows him the teleport scroll. Dyrus looks at the spell and comments that such magical scrolls are the hallmarks of demons. Our boy recommends that they get a couple of more scrolls as they might require them later. Our boy adds that he found a magic book too and explains that if they put all the scrolls inside it, then they will be easier to access when needed. Dyrus becomes confused as he thinks that our boy was a prisoner, but he appears to know his way around the castle a bit too well. After collecting everything, they decide to leave. Dyrus asks our boy if he knows which way they came. Our boy confidently points forward, but Dyrus grabs his hand, warning him to stay quiet. Around the corner, knights are patrolling the hallway. Voices echo as one knight says he saw someone enter the castle, and another calls them cowards for hiding inside. Dyrus comments that these are knights of the Silurian Duchy. They belong to Bertus' maternal family power, one of the strongest noble families of the empire. They want Bertus to be enthroned as the emperor, and because of that, most of the knights that make up the Silurian Duchy are no ordinary knights. Rather, they are high-ranking knights of noble status. And probably that's how Francis died, because he didn't listen to Bertus. Dyrus and our boy remain hidden as our boy quietly assesses their surroundings, knowing that their next move could determine their survival. One of the knights tells the captain not to worry as they'll find them quickly. Our boy wonders how he can find us quickly. Suddenly, one knight's eyes glow. Dyrus and our boy stand petrified at the knight's boastful declaration that he had just checked on them, and they're behind the stone statue, hiding from them. He says if one listens closely, one could actually hear their breathing coming from there. The captain unsheaths his sword, pointing it in the direction of the statue, and asks them to come out submissively. A leg can be seen poking out from around the corner. The captain sneers and says Charlotte is pathetic for having sent innocent people to die for her. Being enraged, Dyrus says that the knight should be ashamed of his vile attempts to try and harm the princess. The captain dismisses what Dyrus says and says that the ravings of a worthless knight mean nothing to him. He declares that he wouldn't want to kill a civilian, but it's all for the future of the empire. Dyrus steps out from behind the corner, takes out his sword, and tells our boy not to interfere. Our boy, standing beside Dyrus, mutters that he went through so much just to escape this very castle. Looking away in fear, our boy wonders if, after everything, they're just going to kill him here. Our boy stares at the statue, frowning. He notices the glowing eyes of the gargoyle statue. Our boy looks puzzled and thinks that in comics or games, statues like this usually come to life in moments like this. To his astonishment, the statue begins to move. The captain gazes at the statue in horror, asking what is happening. The statue slams the knight into the floor. Our boy watches in shock as the other knight screams that their commander has just died and demands to know what happened. He panics as the statue begins moving toward him and kills him as well. Our boy is shocked, unable to know how the statue gained life, thinking instead that he only hallucinated it moving. Dyrus takes hold of Ron's wrist, informing him that this was their best opportunity at escape, whatever the reason. The two of them escape by riding a horse. Dyrus exclaimed why the gargoyle statue suddenly came to life, and our boy says he doesn't know either. But in his thoughts, our boy says it's a lie that he doesn't know, as our boy thinks about the status screen he had seen after entering this body. In that status window, there is an ability called Demon Domination. The ability, in all probability, had unconsciously caused the statue to wake up. Our boy hopes that Dyrus won't suspect him about something like this. Dyrus turns around to our boy and says it was good that they were left unscathed. Our boy nods in agreement, saying they almost died. Dyrus suddenly notices something behind them and curses in horror. A group of knights is already catching up with them, shouting that they cannot let them escape the forest. Dyrus wonders where so many knights came from. Our boy urgently tells Dyrus to grab him, leaving Dyrus confused as he doesn't understand our boy's plan. Our boy flips through the magic book desperately, trying to find out what to do. He knows he cannot die here. He is holding a scroll and declares that it is time to get out. He casts a spell by using the scroll and accelerates the horse's speed by making it glow. The horse runs faster. Dyrus pays attention to the fact with astonishment that it is acceleration magic that our boy has done. He emphasizes that, at that distance, they can hardly try to catch them. Suddenly, an arrow bypasses from behind Dyrus to fly into it. It comes from a crossbow of some knight. Dyrus saw they would not simply be left as well. Our boy flicks through the book, nodding confidently to say he's found a win-win option. Dyrus is suspicious, asking if our boy intends to use magic. Dyrus warns him that spells won't work on knights of this strength. Our boy says that he has written the rules of this world and knows that knights wouldn't be so easily defeated by ordinary spells. However, gets an idea of how to resolve the situation. Using the illusion ability, our boy casts a spell targeting the horses of the knights. The eyes of the horses glow, and one knight is confused, asking his horse what was wrong with his horse as it struggles to control it. Our boy smiles, seeing that the illusion has worked. He says if they can incapacitate a few more knights, they will really have a good shot at escaping. He is flipping through the book again. Our boy keeps searching and begins to see their own horse get tired. Meanwhile, the knights are getting closer and closer. Feeling frustrated, our boy tries to think of a new solution, but suddenly spots something strange in the forest, a group of demons, and realizes that these are surviving demons from the defeated Demon King's army. They walk forward with displeasure, appearing ragged from their capture. Our boy watches, asking himself what this strange feeling is. He remembers having the same sensation when he made the gargoyle statue move. One of the demons steps forward, his eyes glowing with fury. Dyrus screams in horror that there is an orc in front of them. The orc roars and charges, and Dyrus screams that this must be the end for them. However, to their surprise, the orc ignores them and passes by. Dyrus wonders why the orc did not attack them. One of the pursuing knights also notices the orc and shouts, asking what's wrong. Dyrus and our boy stand there unmoving as a knight wonders out loud if they can really control a captive demon. The orc turns and strikes one of the knights from behind. The knight is enraged and bellows at the orc to get out of his way. Meanwhile, our boy is tugging on Dyrus's arm, insisting that they must leave now. Looking back, our boy grins to himself, thinking that he was right. After all, the demon's authority works in their favor too. Now they have succeeded in fending off the knight's cause of demons. This all comes very naturally to Dyrus. He is simply puzzled. He thinks about the whole thing and tries to understand why they keep on getting help from demons at random times. He decides not to suspect our boy because it's just pointless now. They have a princess to save. As they draw close to the tents, a knight who's standing guard interrupts them and mentions that this is Charlotte's barack. A knight orders Lieutenant Dyrus to pronounce his name before him. Lieutenant remains calm as he introduces himself, stating that he is Lieutenant Dyrus, while adding that they have an important report to inform the princess of. The guard knight questions whose Lieutenant Dyrus is and wonders how a common lieutenant would be requested to see Her Highness. He scoffs at Dyrus for thinking he would be permitted through so readily, especially with a boy, and commands them to be gone. Dyrus becomes angry. Without hesitation, he kills the knight and turns to our boy, saying it is time for Plan B. More knights rush to attack right away, shouting in anger. Dyrus notices the commotion and points to the side, instructing our boy to go to Highness and save her. Our boy hesitates, but enters Charlotte's tent holding the magic book. Inside the tent, two people wearing hats exclaim in shock, asking who is he and why he was allowed inside. Charlotte stares at him stunned. Without giving her a chance to respond, our boy urgently asks her to close her eyes. He uses the flash ability, temporarily blinding everyone. Our boy instructs Charlotte to follow him. She reaches out to him, and as he grabs her, he activates the mass teleportation ability. There suddenly bursts out an intense column of light from the seal, where our boy announces their arrival at the capital of the Guardium Empire. The notification congratulates our boy for completing the prologue. He is awarded an achievement called the Historical Turning Point, and in addition, gives him 1,000 points for the same. It mentioned that he has changed the fate of the entire future and emerged as the surviving main character instead of what really originally existed in this story. The story continues with an overview of the Guardium Empire capital city from an elevated perspective. Here is the main story of the Demon King's death unfolds. Gradium was modeled after Seoul, where our boy was born. Charlotte and our boy arrived at Guardium after teleporting. Standing in the middle of the city, our boy gazes at the sheer size and detail of the city, knowing he would not have described it that way in his novel. He can't even imagine how someone would bother to draw every brick on the massive streets, but then he reminds himself this isn't a time to turn into author mode. Charlotte has sat on the ground. Looking visibly distraught, asks if that could be really where the capital stood. Confused, they realize they were standing in front of a camp where they just met in demon territories. Our boy realizes she's clearly disoriented and leans down to apologize for bringing her here without explaining everything properly. He holds out her hand and tells her that when he reached the Demon King's castle, Sir Francis was already dead. Shocked, Charlotte asks if he is sure. She takes his hand and asks again if they ended up in the capital because of his power. Our boy hesitates and explains that someone helped them. Just then, Lieutenant Dyrus steps in front of them. Our boy immediately asks if Dyrus is injured, but Dyrus tells him he is fine, stating that if they had stayed in the camp any longer, they would not have survived. The scene flashes back to the backup plan, Plan B. According to the plan, Dyrus made a diversion so that they could gain more time while our boy and Charlotte left. He proceeded then, following them through a teleportation scroll. Our boy frowns, thinking how lucky they were to have 2 teleportation scrolls. Without that second one, Dyrus would have definitely died. Charlotte approaches Dyrus and asks who he is. Kneeling, Dyrus introduces himself and says it is an honor to meet the princess. He asks for her permission to explain everything to her. As they walk down the streets, Dyrus provides Charlotte with a detailed account of what happened starting with Francis's death, the infiltration of the castle, and how they narrowly escaped from the Solarians' knights. Our boy, walking behind them, listens as Dyrus explains it and pauses to reflect on it. He remembers how the gargoyle took out a few of the knights in the castle by surprise, and how one of the demons they had caught started to go haywire, which gave them time to escape. Thanks to the teleportation scrolls, they arrived safely at the capital. Charlotte glanced back at our boy and found him suspicious in a small way. Our boy realizes that Charlotte is starting to connect the dots. Our boy frowns, thinking it would be unusual if she fully trusted him given everything she's been through, considering the intrigues of noble life. Knowing he can't remain with her for much longer without putting himself in danger, our boy slips away silently. He stumbles through an archway, gets a good breath of air, and falls into a wall. He sees how often he's escaped death, yet sat there as frail, starving, and broke. Now he sits on the ground, begging pennies from passers-by. As he gazes into the future, he regrets not having allowed demons in his book to consume mana. Then, suddenly, a window appears on his screen, alerting him to the fact that he has just unlocked the interference ability of world settings. Our boy stares at the status window, where he is informed of his gaining achievement points, as well as how his acts could alter history. It further enumerates some of the available challenges. Our boy examines the screen, which shows complicated details, and our boy asks to summarize details in 3 sentences. The status window then shows that our boy is able to interact directly with the world setting through the usage of achievement points. The second point is that major events might not be revisioned or might require a large amount of points. The final point is that skill can't be used to cause setting collapse. Our boy thinks that it might be complicated, but it seems a good cheat ability to make it out of this world alive. Our boy looks for more settings to get to know what he can do for now, and status window shows him to take the writer's advice. Our boy looks confused as he tries to code what is vague advice that shows him a riddle asking how many people were kidnapped at the demon castle, while the clear advice tells him to go to the magic item store. Our boy thought that it was suggesting that he make a quick buck with the magic scrolls that he got from the castle, so that's why our boy went to Aligar District Commerce Area. A bald man inspects the book, accusing our boy of trying to fool him. An older man in glasses laughs at the book, saying this is the first time he's seen someone trying to sell such garbage, and advises him to go home before he gets beaten by someone. A red-haired woman taps the book with her finger, saying he should go into art instead of wasting time. Everyone in the shop thinks our boy is trying to sell fake scrolls. Our boy puts the manuscript on the counter and insists that he wants to sell it. Our boy thinks back to the system's suggestion about visiting the magic shop. Didn't they mean for him to sell the scrolls from the book? He's left wondering why nothing is working out as planned. Not discouraged, our boy moves on to another shop, where he shows the scroll to the shopkeeper, who seems intrigued. The shopkeeper asks if he can trace another scroll, commenting on how well our boy draws, and suggesting they split the profits from selling the scrolls in half. The shopkeeper adds that if he can finish tracing the scroll by the next day, he will be paid 5 silver coins. Although our boy agrees, but decides not to do so as he is not confident that he can copy a scroll. Also, he thinks, what if someone tries to use that fake scroll in time of emergency, and it will not work? Our boy can't help but wonder why no one seems to recognize the scrolls he took from the Demon King's castle. Feeling suspicious, he decides to try one more shop and plans to sell the fireball scroll if no one recognizes the others. At the next shop, he finds the place messy and empty, but as he looks around, a red-haired lady enters and asks if he is a customer. Our boy tells her he wants to sell some scrolls, but she replies that she doesn't buy scrolls and also won't let him leave with them. Instead, she offers him 2 gold coins, but upon seeing the scrolls, her expression changes. She becomes serious and fixes him with an intense gaze, asking where he got the scrolls. She recognizes them as magic constructs used only by demons and demands answers. Feeling the weight of the situation, our boy becomes nervous. While he knows magic exists in this world, he never took the time to understand how it works or the differences between human and demon magic. He begins to realize this is why merchants dismissed the scrolls as fake. They were either not mages or didn't know enough about magic to recognize their value. However, this woman is different. She sees through him immediately, and her serious tone makes it clear she knows exactly what the scrolls are. The red-haired girl again asks our boy in anger about the scrolls. In a moment of panic, our boy tries to use his status window to make her forget the situation, but he doesn't have enough achievement points to do so. Left with no other option, he reluctantly tells her the truth, admitting that he took the scrolls from the Demon King's castle, fully aware that this confession might bring serious consequences. Our boy hesitantly explains everything to the red-haired girl and tells her the story of how he saved the princess, but the woman doesn't seem to believe him. She says that if he had done something like that, he must have received a reward for it. Our boy insists that he is not lying and adds that this could even lead to his death at the hands of the imperial prince, Bertus. Our boy sighs with relief as the woman smiles sadly and asks if the Demon King is dead. She approaches Valor, saying he and the princess must have had a hard time, and that so much suffering has fallen on the life of an ordinary guy. He laughs nervously as the girl hugs him, telling him not to be afraid. Our boy feels glad that she is kind, but wants to leave quickly because he's very hungry. She looks at him and says she will try to remove the curse that was probably cast on him in the castle. Our boy becomes worried, thinking she might remove the transformation spell. She asks him to stand still, her gaze tense. The woman folds her hands, and a glowing ornament appears. The woman points her hands at him and exclaims, "Dispersion!" Our boy screams for her to stop, but it's too late. Pink smoke and a glowing light surround him as the girl steps back, frowning, with a drop of sweat on her cheek. The glow fades, revealing Valier's red hair, horns on his head, and confusion on his face. The woman kneels down and addresses him as His Highness. Our boy freezes, looking at her in shock, as she asks if he doesn't remember her. Raising her hand surrounded by flames, she speaks in an unknown language, her eyebrows furrowed. As she opens her mouth, our boy notices her red eyes, realizing she's a vampire. Flames swirl around her as she confirms this. Our boy raises his hand to his face, and the woman exclaims that he really doesn't remember her. Our boy thinks to himself, but can't remember. The woman walks to the window, saying they can't stay here for long because they might be seen. She pulls the curtains tightly and suggests moving to her room on the second floor to continue their conversation. Our boy looks at her wearily, wondering what's going on, but agrees. The woman offers our boy sandwiches, saying he must be hungry and apologizes that she can't offer much. Our boy thanks her and thinks he can't address her the same way as before since she has switched to formal speech. As he eats a sandwich, the woman asks if he truly lost all his memories. Our boy confirms that he forgot everything except the fact that he is the Prince of Demons. Drawing the curtain, the woman says it's better this way for both of them because of the dangerous scroll he brought. Kneeling in front of our boy, she formally introduces herself as Elaris, a member of the Demon King Army's Guardian Infiltration Squad, Tuesday, and promises to serve him. Our boy can't remember if he has written something like this. As he eats, our boy wonders why a vampire is living in such a sunny place. She shyly explains that she stays there to save on rent. Her smile quickly fades as she tells him about 2 other demons in the capital. Elaris explains that one member is active under the false identity of Count Argon Pontius, Sparkgar, a white-haired werewolf, while another demon lives near Irene's riverbank, Lycanthrope. She is a demon called Irene's Wild Dog. Sparkgar kidnaps the princess of the Empire by using his mastery of transformation magic to blend into human society. Our boy remembers Charlotte and realizes Sparkgar has taken her, deciding he needs to be cautious. He asks about the wild dog, and Elleris explains that the werewolf controls the criminal underworld due to his incredible close combat skills. She adds that she has built an army in a short time. Our boy thinks the squad sounds more like a group of gangsters. Elleris explains that Lycanthrope is currently the leader of the gang and also handles the squad's income. Elleris lowers her eyes and asks again if our boy truly remembers nothing. Our boy sighs and wipes his face as Elleris admits she is relieved he has survived, believing they have a chance to revive their world. Our boy cuts her off, saying he has no intention of reviving the demon world. He argues that gathering demons would only restart the war, which he cannot endure again, as our boy says that doing something like this will only mean his death. Elleris becomes upset and shouts that he has a duty as the prince to save their future. Our boy firmly replies that the time of demons is over and tells her to stop acting like a servant. Elleris bows her head and apologizes, saying she understands. After a silence, she suggests our boy rest and begins to leave, but our boy calls out to her as he thinks he is being oversensitive. Elleris stops but doesn't turn around, and for a moment, our boy thinks she looks strangely happy. That night, our boy lies in bed while Elleris sits silently nearby. He glances at her and thinks about how vampires are supposed to be noble creatures of the night and thinks that she looks beautiful. He calls her name, but she addresses him as His Highness again. Our boy becomes frustrated and reminds her to stop calling him that. Our boy asks her what kind of person he was in the past, and Elleris seems nervous and smiles as she says he had been a proud and wonderful demon. Our boy can tell from her hesitation that it isn't true. He turns away and tells her to forget about it, saying they have to meet the other squad members tomorrow. He then asks where she plans to sleep. Moonlight illuminates the room as Elleris gently places her hand on his shoulder. Our boy realizes and feels embarrassed that they will share the bed. Watching her sleep, he thinks about how absurd his reincarnation is, though moments like this make it feel less like crazy. The next morning, our boy and Elleris set off into a capital alive with excitement. The news of the resurrected princess, the hero's death, and the demon king's fall has everyone rejoicing. Because the war that has taken so many lives is finally over, people are celebrating. Our boy walks among the crowd, following the princess, as shouts of "Long live the princess" echo around them. Instead of joining the celebration, our boy and Elleris make their way to a train in the Oligarch district and head south toward the Boar Boys Gate by the banks of the Irene River. Sitting on a bench at the station, they rely on Elleris's powers to avoid wandering through the streets and parks of the city. Our boy comments on how the area has turned into a street full of homeless people, and Elleris confirms his observation with displeasure, saying that this is, in fact, a homeless shelter. They approach a tent near a fire where water flows from a drain pipe in the wall. Elleris warns our boy to watch his step as they move forward in the dark. He mutters that it is creepy. A girl named Lawyer suddenly stands up from the fire, clenches her fists, and addresses Elleris directly as Her Highness. Our boy is taken aback and timidly says it is nice to meet her, not expecting her to be a girl. He had assumed he would meet a muscular man instead. Lawyer asks if our boy really doesn't remember anything, and Elleris confirms that he has lost all his memories except for the fact that he is the demon prince. Lawyer sighs in relief before suddenly clenching her fists and recalling an embarrassing memory of how our boy, in the past, had made her pretend to be a dog. Elleris laughs and teases her further, making Lawyer furious. Our boy, feeling awkward, apologizes and extends his hand to Lawyer, saying that while he can't change the past, he wants to improve their relationship. Lawyer hesitates, but shakes his hand. After a brief moment of silence, she yanks her hand away and yells at him, accusing him of treating her like a dog again. Our boy quickly apologizes, saying he doesn't mean it that way. Suddenly, someone runs toward them through the water, shouting joyfully. It is Sarkar, who immediately drops to his knees before our boy, overwhelmed with emotion. Tears stream down his face as he praises the great demon prince. He hugs our boy tightly, but our boy struggles to breathe and asks him to let go. Elleris reminds our boy to be cautious around Sarkar, who is fiercely loyal to the Demon King and will sacrifice anything to restore the demon world. Lawyer eventually pulls Sarkar back, scolding him, while our boy tries to catch his breath. Sitting by the fire, Sarkar begins insisting that our boy should rebuild the lands of the demons and take revenge on the Empire for their destruction. Lawyer angrily interrupts, accusing Sarkar of sugarcoating things and throwing around empty promises. Our boy crosses his arms and admits that while rebuilding the demon lands sounds noble, it is a reckless plan, as he says he is good for nothing. They sit opposite each other. Sarkar is indignant, asking what kind of good-for-nothing he is. Sarkar explains that he is a great and powerful archdemon standing above all demons. Our boy asks what kind of archdemon he is and why it is so significant. They all stare at him in surprise. Sarkar begins to speak, but Elleris interrupts him, saying that in the Dark Lands, they once called home, a merciless war raged amidst the backdrop of ancient events. Many years ago, humans began to form states to establish order. However, despite their attempts to unite with other races, the demons continued to exterminate one another. One day, a demon appeared who stopped the endless war, invading their minds. He earned the title of Archdemon as a symbol of their recognition. Over time, this title was passed down to all his descendants. Sarkar raises his fist as our boy asks what he should do. There is a plan, he replies, explaining that first, he must become stronger. His face grows serious, then softens as he says they must return to the demon territory and rally the survivors. Our boy folds his arms across his chest, closes his eyes, and declares, no. He says this plan is the worst. It's too risky to go there so soon. Frowning, he looks ahead. They are in the heart of enemy territory, the capital of the empire. He resolves to stay, study human culture, and build a strategy. Sarkar bursts into tears. He cannot stop crying at our boy's courage. Our boy, observing his reaction, thinks to himself that it is indeed much more comfortable here than in the lifeless forests. Sarkar raises his hand, claiming to have a brilliant idea. Our boy looks confused. Sarkar suggests attending the Empire's educational institution, the temple. Lawyer laughs at the suggestion, finding it absurd, but for once, she and Sarkar seem to be on the same wavelength. Our boy looks at them both, feeling thoroughly confused. Sarkar excitedly declares that our boy can grow stronger and sow the seeds of revenge within the temple, where geniuses are trained and heroes are born. Our boy says the plan is quite decent, but feels nervous as he glances at Elleris, realizing he might not convince them so easily. Elleris also praises the idea as brilliant. Our boy steps back, stuttering as he tells them to slow down. He reminds them they don't even know how the temple works or what will happen if his identity is discovered. Sarkar takes off a ring and hands it to our boy, assuring him that it will take care of everything. Our boy puts it on and learns it allows him to transform into anyone. His pitch-black eyes gleam as Sarkar declares that the revival of the demon empire is within reach. They decide he will join the temple. He will use a fake identity created by Elleris or Sarkar, but he also worries about the risk of discovery, especially after the princess returns and investigations into Charlotte's kidnapping begin. Lawyer lifts the flap of a nearby tent and introduces him to Daibun, a trusted ally. Daibun shakes our boy's hand, and they exchange greetings. When asked for his name, our boy hesitates before giving a false name, Reinhardt, as Elleris has advised. Then the scene shifts to few moments earlier, where Elleris and our boy were talking. She warns that using the name of the previous Demon King will expose him too easily. Thinking back while sitting around the fire, the group brainstorms potential new names for him. Lawyer suggests Hellscream, which Sarkar rejects as too vicious, and Elleris vetoes Rich King for being even worse than his real name. Our boy grows frustrated and shouts that this endless debate has to stop. He accepts the name, Reinhardt, even though it feels strangely familiar, as it is the name of our boy. With his appearance changed by the ring and a false identity crafted, he prepares to join the temple. Lawyer tells Daibun to create an ID for our boy and arrange for him to enter the temple. Daibun agrees, but asks how they will cover the cost of tuition. Everyone freezes, realizing they have overlooked the expense. Daibun reveals that their current income can't cover even a single semester's fees. Our boy becomes shocked and suddenly remembers that these beggars don't have enough money for such an elite education. The temple, the most prestigious school on the continent, charges tuition equivalent to $100,000 in his world. Lawyer, resting her head on her hand, remarks that it is surprising how poor they are. Our boy, drinking from a glass, avoids the subject. When Lawyer angrily suggests taking money from their candy business, Daibun dismisses the idea, reminding them it will ruin their shop. Frustrated, our boy raises his hand and proposes they only pay for the first semester and earn a scholarship after that. He reasons that, with the world lacking a hero, the temple might begin searching for candidates and will cover training costs for those who prove themselves worthy. Even as a low-ranking demon, he is still an archdemon and feels confident he can achieve at least one talent worthy of a scholarship. Lawyer exclaims at his determination, but our boy thinks to himself that if things go badly, he can always rely on his system points to buy talent. Daibun remains skeptical, pointing out that their current budget can't even cover the application fee. He explains that income from the Boys Gate Bridge has been declining lately, leaving them strapped for cash. Our boy thinks for a moment, then asks why they don't look for opportunities elsewhere. He suggests that if customers aren't coming to them, they should go where the people are. The group considers the idea of selling on trains, where parents will buy toys for their screaming children regardless of quality. Lawyer, impressed, praises our boy as a genius for the idea. Our boy takes his hand forward for a handshake with Lawyer, but Lawyer pets and starts behaving like a dog, which surprises Daibun. Sparks fly between the werewolf and our boy as they bond over the plan. Daibun confidently declares they will make it work and ensure our boy is accepted into the temple. As they celebrate, the group raises their mugs in laughter. Daibun laughs and shouts for everyone a toast drink to their new family member. Everyone raise their mugs and cheer for our boy under the moonlit sky. As the celebration continues, our boy notices Daibun mentioning a group and asks who they are. Daibun casually replies that it's their group. Our boy frowns, remembering how Lawyer has a large organization that supports their operations, including the infiltration squad and a magic shop. Despite this, they still have money for casual evenings, making him suspect she is hiding something. Lawyer suddenly appears behind them, furious. Her glowing eyes create a menacing atmosphere. She grabs our boy by the shirt, drags him along the ground, and scolds him for not thinking about the consequences of his drunken actions. Our boy asks about her other source of income, suggesting she might be extorting money from others. Lawyer admits reluctantly that selling candy is just a cover and that her group occasionally helps the Thieves Guild gather information. She assures our boy that she can explain everything if he wants to know, but also that he won't need to deal with them after entering the temple, especially if he earns a scholarship. Our boy doesn't push further and goes to bed, knowing she won't tell him more. The next day, our boy and Daibun visits the capital's administrative bureau to get our boy's fake ID. The process is easier than expected. Daibun then guides him to the temple's reception area, an elaborate building with golden interiors. Daibun comments on the sheer number of wealthy families sending their children to the temple. They notice a consulting office where a test determines if applicants have outstanding abilities, granting free training to successful candidates. Daibun suggests they try, and despite our boy's hesitation, they proceed. At the application window, a girl greets them coldly. Our boy confidently announces his intention to pay for one semester. But the girl sighs and explains the temple no longer allows students to pay for just one semester, citing issues with students borrowing money. Our boy, irritated, realizes his plan is falling apart. Daibun suggests they take the free abilities test instead. Although our boy doubts it will lead anywhere, Daibun convinces him to give it a try. The girl sighs tiredly, opens a closet door, and prepares for their test. Our boy whispers that it might be a waste of time, but Daibun urges him not to be a coward. With no other choice, our boy reluctantly follows, hoping for a hidden talent to be revealed. They need to try everything possible. In the testing room, the employee tells our boy to place his hand on the ball. He hesitates, worrying it might detect his demonic power, but decides to rely on the ring if his identity is revealed. He places his hand on the ball as the employee glances at the screen and frowns. Our boy panics, wondering if he should run, but the employee apologizes, saying the device seems faulty and needs to be replaced. Daibun leans toward our boy with a grin, asking if he is secretly gifted. Our boy brushes him off, hoping the malfunction is due to his human transformation. The employee brings out a new sphere and assures them it has been tested. Our boy touches it again, and text appears on the screen. Daibun, growing impatient, shouts to know what it says. The employee stutters and explains that our boy has aptitude. It's not enough to call him a genius, but it indicates a high chance of success with proper effort. Our boy stares at the screen in shock as it reveals something extraordinary and his potential extends to everything. The results show that our boy Reinhardt was born with an aptitude for everything in this world. According to the results, our boy can use both holy and dark magic. Daibun, overwhelmed with excitement, hits our boy on the back, causing him to slump forward onto the table. Meanwhile, people outside the testing room sell gums to the crowd. Lawyer asks our boy about aptitude. Daibun murmurs that it is amazing that an elite talent appears among them. Our boy, though initially stunned, thinks about how his limitless potential makes sense. With achievement points, he can develop talent in any field: swordsman, mage, archer, and more. It seems the world is gifting him this ability to carve any path he desires. Daibun calls out to him, worried, but our boy quickly assures him he is fine. Daibun laughs and reminds our boy that without him, he'd never have discovered this. As they leave the temple, our boy realizes his inclusion in the main plot is inevitable. With his limitless potential, he can easily be placed in the royal class. The royal class is the most elite at the Temple Academy, granting scholarships, luxurious dormitories, and freedom to attend any class. It is home to the Empire's brightest talents. Our boy, however, feels conflicted. He hopes to quietly study in his first semester and accumulate achievement points, but now it seems impossible to keep a low profile. By evening, our boy finds himself assigned to Class 1A, the most elite among the royal classes. Elleris worries about his condition as he sits at his desk, his head on the table. He can't help but think about his novel, Ludwig, a transfer student from Class 1B. Ludwig hates Class 1A for their arrogance, but eventually grows closer to them over time. Our boy sighs, knowing that most of his classmates are egotistical and cruel. While his limitless potential is a blessing, it comes with enormous pressure. Elleris encourages our boy, but our boy thinks about the villains he is going to meet in Class A. Elleris pours herself a drink as our boy watches her, still wondering why she is so insistent on sending him to the temple. Our boy, however, fears the opposite. What if his newfound power changes his mind and drives him to start another war? Elleris believes that if our boy spends enough time among humans, he might stop hating them. As he thinks this over, Elleris places a suitcase in front of him. It contains his clothes, reminding him that one school uniform won't be enough for his time at the temple. Fire appears in Elleris's hands as she places a necklace around our boy's neck. He takes it in his hand and examines it closely. Elleris asks if he remembers the nickname Tuesday. Our boy thinks back to when she first revealed it at her shop. She explains that the name comes from the 7 vampire clans known as the 7 Knights. The Monday and Sunday clans vanished long ago, and their magic is lost, but the remaining clans continue to develop their respective elemental powers and pass them down through generations. The necklace is the treasure of her clan, the Tuesday tribe, and the symbol of its leader. Our boy looks at the pendant, realizing Elleris is the leader of her clan. He wonders why she is giving him something so valuable. She explains that, just as he receives the ring of the Dreadfind house, she is giving him her clan's treasure. The necklace allows him to wield fire magic, depending on his mana reserve. Testing its power, our boy stretches out his hand, and flames appear. He stares at the flame in awe, but Elleris warns him not to get too attached to the power of Tuesday's flame. Its strength is tied to his emotions, particularly his enmity toward others. Our boy understands that she is giving it to him out of concern for his safety. Thanking her, he promises to protect it and use it sparingly. Elleris smiles softly, reassured by his words. Our boy then goes to the warehouse, where Lawyer hands him a bag containing his allowance. Since his scholarship covers tuition, the money is his to use as he wishes. Lawyer reminds him not to waste it on nonsense. Her words leave our boy momentarily shocked before he pushes her out and closes the door. As he bows his head, he remembers a significant problem. The genre of the Demon King's death is everyday life, a novel he writes to please fans who dislike his tragic endings. However, he lacks the talent for writing happy conclusions, and the plot becomes chaotic. Our boy recalls how, in the middle of the story, a gate opens to other worlds, leading to an invasion by a monster army. Our boy clenches his teeth, cursing himself for such a reckless twist. Our boy thinks about running away, but realizes the people of this world shouldn't suffer because of his poor decisions. Determined to take responsibility, he decides to study at the temple, grow stronger, and earn achievement points. He resolves to prevent the monster's invasion, even if it means entering battle himself. The next day, standing before the temple, our boy hears instructions for new students to collect their student cards and admission letters, with the royal class directed to the dormitory lobby at 13. He marvels at the capital, surprised by how much his hurried world building has created. As he enters the temple, overwhelmed by its size, a girl approaches him and introduces herself as Ceres Van Owen, the head of the royal class. She shakes his hand, checks his information, guides him to his dormitory, reminds him about the freshman welcome party, and tells him that attendance is mandatory, so he should come. Our boy thanks her before heading off. When our boy finds his room, he scans his ticket, and the lock vanishes. Entering, he is shocked by how luxurious the space is. It is far larger than anything he imagines. He unpacks the welcoming gift, which includes a map of the temple, dormitory rules, a snack, a pen, and a notebook. Sitting on the bed, he thinks about all the important characters in the story he writes. The sun illuminates the room as he begins preparing himself for the days ahead. Our boy lies on his stomach, writing in his notebook and thinking about the characters, Bertus and Ellen. The royal class students are called to gather, and time passes faster than our boy realizes. Turning to his notes, he admits that while he doesn't remember every character, his notes help him recognize who is who. Sitting in the lobby, he notices girls admiring a boy while two boys nearby grumble. Our boy looks at them, but can't recognize more than half of the faces. He glances away, only to see older students glaring at him. Their expressions are intense and hostile, which confuses him. Seniors usually aren't interested in first years. Someone suddenly steps on his foot, and our boy falls to the floor in pain. The person apologizes and offers his hand to help him up. Scratching the back of his head, the boy introduces himself as Ludwig. Our boy shakes his hand and immediately recognizes him as Reinhardt. Before he can dwell on it, the announcement is made instructing newcomers to take seats in the center of the lobby. As our boy finds his seat, he notices that Class B has 11 students instead of the 10 from his story. He wonders if this is due to his unexpected appearance in the plot. Some boys approach him, questioning how he manages to get into the royal class. Our boy already knows what is coming: mockery and tension. An announcement is made for the students to introduce themselves. Our boy thinks it would have been easier to end up in Class B, 11 instead. One of the boys introduces himself as A1, the top-ranked student, Bertus de Gardius. Our boy recognizes him as someone who, in the original plot, thinks he was supposed to enroll under a fake identity. Other students begin introducing themselves. Harriet is A4, and Kayer is A10. When our boy stands to introduce himself as A11, all eyes turn to him. Whispers about his unlimited potential fill the room. Bertus smiles silently, and our boy feels embarrassed by whispers. Feeling awkward, he covers his face as a girl named Charlotte stands up, smiling, and introduces herself as B1. Our boy becomes shocked after seeing the princess there. Charlotte introduces herself, and Ludwig notes that the temple is independent of the empire's authority, meaning even members of the imperial family have to prove their abilities to enter. Our boy recalls that, apart from Bertus and Charlotte, no other members of the imperial family are in the royal class. Our boy emphasizes that this fact alone means enormous power awaits Bertus if he graduates with honors. Our boy imagines Bertus on the throne, realizing he is the hidden villain of the Demon King's demise. He thinks about how both the first prince and the first princess entered the same temple in the same year. This deviation makes our boy uneasy, as it is not what is written in the novel. Our boy thinks it might be because he and the princess were meant to die, but they survived. Bertus has already revealed his identity as the first prince of the empire, contrary to the original plot, where he keeps it secret. Bertus awakens 3 abilities through massive funding and effort by the empire, becoming a master of swordsmanship, magic, and mana control. He is a perfectly engineered hero, But our boy thinks that without all these traits, he wouldn't have become the Empire's greatest swordsman. Our boy sighs, knowing Bertus isn't his biggest concern. Instead, he is more worried about Charlotte, the first princess. She is in Class B, which makes him wonder if she isn't on Bertus's level. Our boy assuring that Betrus's skills are not according to A1 class. He questions if the teachers are nervous about having two imperial family members in the royal class for the first time. Ceres steps to the microphone and explains the rules of the royal class. She declares that within the temple, all students are equals regardless of their status. Commoners and nobles alike are treated the same, with no exceptions beyond the distinctions between upper and lower classes. She raises her hand to emphasize her point, making it clear that merit is all that matters at the temple. Ceres addresses the students, asking if they all understand that the temple cannot function if feuds over family power are allowed. Frowning, she warns that anyone using their status to pressure others will receive a reprimand from the student council president. Too many reprimands will lead to a sub-council deciding on disciplinary action, possibly resulting in expulsion. The room falls silent as Ceres continues, revealing a letter from the Imperial Palace of Guardias. She explains that, while such letters are rare, she will read it due to its importance. She reads aloud that if Princess Charlotte is harmed, regardless of severity, the responsible party will lose their right to the throne forever. Ceres notes that this is a direct order from Emperor Nello. Our boy realizes the letter isn't just a warning, but a message for both supporters and rivals of the imperial family to tread carefully. Our boy smiles, interpreting the message as an instruction to protect one another and compete honorably. Our boy figures this will prevent Bertus and Charlotte from being at each other's throats for now. Our boy sees Bertus begin mingling, asking a guy Leferi if they are truly equals. Leferi hesitates, holding his head in disbelief. Bertus intervenes, asking if things will get harder if reprimanded, to which Leferi reluctantly agrees. Our boy observes how smoothly Bertus manipulates the conversation, endearing himself to others while subtly asserting dominance. Then Bertus approaches a girl, Ellen, to introduce himself. She seems indifferent, replying that she doesn't care about trivial rankings, even though she has been demoted to A2 from A1 by Bertus. Our boy notes that Ellen is so good that she can be in Class A, and her real surname is Aratorius. She is Regan's younger sister, the hero who sacrifices himself to overthrow the Demon King in the original story. Meanwhile, Ludwig tries to make conversation with the class, but his awkward approach leaves many annoyed. Ludwig greets Reinhardt, and then he approaches Harriet, another student, but she lashes out, calling him an idiot and declaring that Class B students don't belong there. Bertus steps in, gently reprimanding Harriet for overreacting. Harriet, embarrassed, apologizes but is clearly flustered. Our boy observes her and recalls that she is Duke Alan's daughter, highly talented in magic and protective of her reputation. Bertus introduces himself to Ludwig. Bertus smooths things over with his usual charm, offering Ludwig assistance if he needs it. Ludwig, meanwhile, earns disapproval from the class for his antics. As our boy watches the interactions, he receives a notification from his system, 100 achievement points for completing his first day at the temple. Surprised, he checks the list of rewards, but his excitement fades when he realizes how expensive talents are. He mutters to himself that he only has enough for one small reward for now. He browses the list, tempted to buy a magic talent, but sees he is still far from affording it. Squinting at the options, he thinks about what to prioritize next. For now, his goal is clear. He needs to work harder, gain more achievement points, and survive the chaos ahead. Our boy imagines how people cast spells and emphasizes that, at the initial stages, superpowers are terribly weak, difficult to control, and require regular training. Frowning, our boy notes that he wants to save up a few more achievement points before taking a superpower. Our boy mentally notes that he will make a decision after looking around. Sunlight envelopes the castle. Despite the fact the entry ceremony of the royal class is held separately, the whole process is quite simple. Our boy sits at his desk as the headmaster introduces each class to their homeroom teacher, and then they are taken to a private class building near the dorms. Looking out the window, our boy notes thoughtfully that there is nothing special about the entrance ceremony. He wonders if that means that, even with a prince and princess, nothing will really change there. The teacher asks him not to get distracted. Our boy turns his gaze and looks at the teacher, noting that it is the homeroom teacher of the class. The teacher, Eppenhauser, introduces himself with a serious expression. Looking at the students, he says that on Mondays and Thursdays, they will have general classes, and on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they will have classes that they sign up for in advance. Eppenhauser looks at A1. Bertus tells him that it is him. The teacher looks at him and announces that he is temporarily appointing him as the leader, noting that management of the group and suggestions should be made through the leader. Eppenhauser, with his hands behind his back, states that if they want to change the leader, they should discuss it with the class and then report to him. He notes that anything he needs to convey to them will be through A1. The teacher looks back and notes that there is an exception. He looks at the frightened students and says that they can contact him directly if they witness a fight, adding that they do not allow students to kill each other as much as they can. Putting his hand on the book, the teacher says that they cannot stop all precedents, so they have to be careful with each other. He asks them to find out what skills their classmates have. The boy turns to him. Eppenhauser turns his attention to him. Kono raises his hand and asks what the teacher will do if they have to intervene. Eppenhauser adjusts his glasses and says that they are treated specially in the temple and that while they are of particular value to the empire, they can also be dangerous to others. He asks if they have been warned before joining. Kono is taken aback and asks again. Eppenhauser says, with a serious expression, that to put it simply, as the head of the royal class, he has every right to immediately punish students who have a special attitude. The boys are scared. Raising his hand, Kayer asks if Eppenhauser can do it. The teacher looks at him and replies that it is because he can do it and that he has been doing it for 10 years. He remarks that he hopes they now understand what he means by the words, "Be careful." Stunned, Kayer mentally asks if teachers have to be so cruel. Eppenhauser takes the paper and says that this is unusual and turns to our boy. Surprised, our boy asks if it is him. Eppenhauser looks at him and asks him to follow him. Our boy, being stunned, mentally asks why they come to the teacher's room. Eppenhauser is sitting opposite him, saying that he has unlimited potential. Despite this, he still does not have a single talent. He pulls out the paper and asks our boy to look at it. He looks at the documents of the two boys, after which the teacher says that Grants, A3, has a superpower and Cliffman, A5, has a fighting talent. He says that Grants will take lessons in meditation and control of superpowers, and Cliffman lessons in close combat. Eppenhauser seriously notes that, in other words, their classmates have specific abilities and obvious ways to develop them. Taken aback, our boy replies that this is true. Adjusting his glasses, the teacher says that our boy has potential in any area but lacks talent. He suggests that our boy can't decide on the area in which he would like to develop. Our boy, with a stone face, asks if Eppenhauser is trying to help him. The teacher says that sometimes it happens that someone's potential and talent differ from what they would like to do. Closing his eyes, Eppenhauser notes that he has seen this more than once, but unlike them, our boy has the advantage of choosing absolutely any area. Our boy closes his eyes and says seriously that he would like to study superpowers. Eppenhauser stares at him. Looking at the document, the teacher replies that he understands our boy has potential in many areas and asks if superpowers are included. Holding the back of his head, our boy replies with a smile that he has unlimited potential, so it is possible. Our boy thinks about how he chooses superpowers because they are cheap, but he doesn't really like Eppenhauser's reaction. Putting the paper down, the teacher states that, according to the temple's rules, students who don't have the appropriate talent are not allowed to attend superpower classes. Looking down, Eppenhauser notes that, for the royal class, everything is a little different, but our boy can be expelled if he doesn't show results. Our boy looks serious. Putting the book away, the teacher says that, for now, our boy will have one subject. Our boy looks at his schedule. The teacher states that our boy cannot ask to change it. Looking at our boy, he says it is quite difficult to awaken a superpower with just one effort, so he should not be afraid to try other areas. Our boy's face is puzzled. He looks out the window and thanks the teacher for his help. Our boy returns to the classroom. Opening the door, our boy notes that this teacher is much better than he thought. Our boy is suddenly taken aback. All his classmates are looking at him. Looking at the guys, he wonders why they are staring at him. Kayer calls out to him from behind. Grinning, he asks if our boy has any talents. He is standing next to him. Frowning, Our boy answers that he does and asks what is wrong. Kair stands in front of all the guys and asks if they are okay with it, noting that this is the royal classroom. Pushing his chair back, he asks if it is okay to let rabble with some kind of unlimited potential in there. Looking at our boy, he asks how he gets in there at all, noting that only the most gifted are allowed into their class. Bertus watches him with a smile. Looking down, our boy asks him to shut up. Kair is taken aback by this. He asks how our boy dares. He pointed out that he was there because the admissions committee had decided so. Standing up from the table, our boy asked if Kair was trying to say that he was better than the temple administration. Our boy asked with a serious expression whether he was above them or not. Our boy stands face to face with him and asks why Kair had opened his dirty mouth in that case. Our boy pointed at him and asked him to look at himself. He points out that this Mr. is an A10 whose ability was a huge supply of mana, but who had no aptitude for magic. Our boy put his hand on his head and asked him to show it when he was worth something. He sits down at his desk. His classmates, dumbfounded, begin to whisper about him. Our boy sits at his desk and assumes that he is screwed up. He thinks seriously that he has no talent, so now they will think he can't control his anger. He wonders in his mind if he should just let it go. He looks back. Bertus is looking at him with a smile. Our boy stares at him, wondering in his mind why he is staring and if he is up to something. People are getting food from the cafeteria. The boys are sitting at tables and eating. Our boy watches Bertus. Looking at him, our boy notices that he can't concentrate because of his gaze. He looks at his fork and thinks that he shouldn't have gotten into a fight with Kair. He wonders why everything is going the way he expects. He writes in his notebook. Our boy starts coughing loudly. A dark aura hangs in the classroom. While there is a scary atmosphere in Class A, everything is joyful in Class B. Our boy sits alone at the table and thinks that, as soon as he takes the place of the fool, the atmosphere in the classroom immediately begins to deteriorate. Bertus asks Harriet if she has a talent for magic. She answers with an embarrassed look that she does. She asks if Bertus has control over magic and susceptibility to magic. Our boy shifts his gaze. Harriet guesses that they have pretty similar abilities. Charlotte raises her hand and says she doesn't like fatty foods. She looks at a piece of meat, and Ludwig tells her that she needs to eat more meat if she wants to recover faster. Our boy watches them and wonders if he is working himself up for nothing. Our boy frowns and thinks that introverts like him don't need to worry about extroverts. Boys run around the square. The teacher looks at the students and tells them to run and stick together. Our boy becomes exhausted mentally and asks if there are 20 laps. After eating, our boy runs after the teacher, who shouts that they must be in excellent physical condition no matter if they specialize in close combat, magic, or have a superpower. He notes that if they do not meet the standards of the Empire, they are finished. Harriet runs at the end and says she is going to die. The teacher catches up with her and asks if she really feels like she is on the verge of death. He says with a furious look that if this were a real fight, she would already be dead. Our boy is suddenly called out and turns around. Ludwig runs up to him and asks if our boy is tired yet. He runs away from our boy and asks him to push himself. Our boy thinks about how hard it is for him to be friends with energetic people like Ludwig. He wonders if this will be the case for him throughout the semester. Ellen runs past them. Our boy looks at her and notes that this is to be expected. Our boy runs after her and thinks that she is the same in the novel, and Ludwig can only match her in endurance. His eyes turn red. The guy starts doing sit-ups. Our boy, dumbfounded, wonders what kind of devilish workout this is. He suddenly sees Charlotte sitting on a bench. Watching her, our boy notes that he envies her even though she is sitting out because she hasn't fully recovered. Our boy watches as the teacher yells at the crying girl. Our boy, dumbfounded, mentally notes that if the teacher finds out he is slacking, she will give him 10 more laps. He begins to try to get up with all his might. The boys are changing in the locker room. Kono is too tired to open the closet. Our boy, looking exhausted, takes off his t-shirt. Frightened, Kono says the same thing awaits them on Thursday. Putting away their things, our boy assumes that he will die on Thursday. Kair approaches him and says that our boy is not in such great shape. Putting on his shirt, our boy asks what he cares about. Kair replies that looking at our boy, he doesn't seem good at fighting. Smirking, he asks why our boy is acting tough in class. Our boy looks at him and says that Kair is the one who picks on him first. Kair pushes him and asks how such a simpleton dares to treat him like that. The boys watch the fight. Kair says that our boy won't be able to say any more nonsense. Kair closes his eyes and says it is nonsense that our boy has managed to get into the classroom. Our boy grabs Kair and, swinging his fist, our boy punches Kair right in the face. The boys fight in the locker room, and the people around them shout that they need to be separated as soon as possible. Bertus and Ludwig pull our boy away with all their might. The blue-haired boy pulls away an enraged Kair, who yells at him to take his hands off and that he will kill his opponent. From behind the closed doors, they can hear shouts for someone to break them up and call the teacher. Eppenhauser looks at them, frowning. The boys sit in the teacher's office opposite him, displeased. Kair points at our boy, yelling that he hits him first. Our boy looks away and frowns, imagining Ludwig. Thinking that it is true they have fought, he wonders how their teacher gets there so quickly. He figures it is the work of Ludwig's ally, who called the teacher. The teacher lowers his head in front of the indignant boy and tells Kair to shut up and not say anything he hasn't been asked. Looking up tensely, Eppenhauser asks our boy if it is true that he hits first. Our boy frowns as his opponent joyfully points at him. Our boy decides to add to his words. He says that Kair has said things that undermine the reputation of the temple. Kair gets angry when he hears this and clenches his teeth. They sit at the table opposite the teacher. Kair, spreading his arms, asks when he does this. Eppenhauser frowns and asks our boy to explain in more detail. Our boy looks at the teacher seriously and says that his rival repeatedly says that the admissions committee is doing its job in bad faith. The teacher looks at him in surprise and asks him to continue. Our boy lowers his head and says that he tells Kair that a student has no right to criticize decisions made by the temple. He clenches his fist and says he admits he has gone too far because he is angry that the temple's authority is being undermined. The guy looks down in frustration. Kair raises his fist while our boy says that his rival tries to humiliate him for his lack of good physical training. Kair tells our boy to stop talking nonsense. The teacher gets angry and tells the two to keep quiet. He looks at our boy and asks what he means when he says that A10 is damaging the temple's reputation. Our boy tilts his head and smirks, deciding that his rival has been caught. He thinks that he knows perfectly well how to anger or please his characters. The guy raises his head and begins to cry, shouting Kair's name. He looks at the surprised guy and says that he declares in front of the entire class that our boy has cheated his way into the class. Our boy thinks that, after all, he has created this world. Kair listens in fear as our boy says that he can stand his mockery. The teacher looks at the very frightened Kair and listens to him say that he has encroached on the sanctity of the temple. The guy lowers his head, holding it with his hands, and our boy says he regards this as an insult to the great empire of Guardias. He cannot contain his anger. Our boy stands up and lowers his head, apologizing for his recklessness. Our boy believes that Eppenhauser's personality trait is patriotism. The teacher frowns and glares at Kair, asking if it is true. Kair looks confused and raises his hand as the teacher repeats the question. The teacher looks at our boy and the crying Kair, saying that he only needs to hear yes or no. Our boy imagines a framed photo of Eppenhauser and says his name. He imagines the man standing and reading a book, thinking about how he is a patriot with an incredibly strong sense of pride in the Guardias Empire and the temple. So he is hostile to anything that defames them. Kair sits with his fists clenched and his head down and listens as the teacher tells him to stay there. The teacher sits opposite the boy and allows our boy to return to the classroom. Our boy enters the classroom with his classmates. He walks around the classroom, and the boys turn to look at him. Our boy sits down at his desk and, closing his eyes, thinks about how he can already sense that a rumor will spread in the two royal classes that he is not only untalented, but also terribly aggressive. He looks out the window with frustration, leaning his elbow on his hand, and thinks. A notification about completing the fight challenge appears in front of the turned-away boy, for which he receives 200 achievement points. He frowns at the message and wonders what it is. Our boy decides that, at least, he won't have to hit the prince in the face anymore. A notification appears with a new challenge. It is necessary to get the best result for the physical education exam. Our boy gets angry and thinks he will get it only if he breaks Ludwig and Ellen's legs. Another window appears with a challenge to get into the top 10 for the midterm exam. The boy gets angry and clenches his fist, wondering how he will do something he could not even accomplish on Earth. The system reports that he needs to get a love confession. Our boy is furious and thinks that for this, only 1,000 points? Because it is unlikely to ever happen. A list of challenges appears, consisting of writing a love letter and getting rejected, skipping classes, getting punished by the teacher, and drawing graffiti at night. He looks in surprise as the teacher enters the room and asks for silence. Kair, being frustrated, closes his eyes and walks past the desks. Our boy frowns and, looking at how sadly his rival is sitting, decides that, judging by his expression, he is unlikely to pick on him again. Eppenhauser stands in the center of the room and asks if everyone is there. He looks seriously at the surprised Bertus and asks him to collect the pre-registration forms. The man watches as the boy approaches the desks with the forms and asks everyone to prepare their forms for him. The teacher takes a stack of papers and says that those who are not completely sure can stay here. The rest are free to go. No one should forget to get permission from the dorm leader if they want to go outside the temple. Our boy holds a form, looking at the class and thinking about how about half of them are still deciding. He writes on the sheet, looking away with displeasure. He looks at the door and hears LaFerry shouting. He frowns and thinks there is only one reason why he is yelling like that. He looks out into the corridor and sees LaFerry shouting at the red-haired girl, saying she is already annoying. How many more times does he have to tell her to stop getting annoying him? Our boy looks at the confused girl on the floor and thinks about her red eyes and hair, which are impossible not to notice. The guy remembers that scarlet is a symbol that foretells trouble. LaFerry turns around with displeasure at the fallen girl and tells her not to catch his eye. Ludwig sits down next to her, helping her up, and our boy thinks about how, in the novel, he has made her bullied just because of her red hair. According to history, red is used to symbolize courage and bravery. However, it later becomes considered a symbol of trouble since archdemons have red eyes and hair. And thinks about how her own parents have thrown her out for this reason, forcing her to live on the street. Unlike him, our boy imagines the girl standing there while everyone laughs behind her and thinks about how she endures all the bullying because, without the temple, she has nowhere else to go. Our boy looks away in frustration and decides everyone rejects her and bullies her just because of her hair color. What a terrible scenario. He goes into the classroom while Ludwig helps her up and thinks about how she has managed to make friends with a guy and how the bullying has decreased, but wonders how long it will last. Our boy looks at the screen with various talents and decides it is time to choose his first talent. He thoughtfully looks at the list and thinks about which one to choose. Our boy sees a talent and wonders didn't he leave out this talent because it was too overpowered. The sun shines over the dorm. Our boy lies thoughtfully on his bed, absent-mindedly poking his finger at the screen. He reads through the list of talents and is shocked when he spots an unexpected ability, self-hypnosis. The very skill he had once abandoned has now reappeared on the list. He reflects on why he gave it up in the first place. He had deemed it too much of a cheating ability. He remembers the moment he discarded a piece of paper labeled self-hypnosis into the trash while sitting at his computer, contemplating how hypnosis could allow him to achieve the impossible. It had always been a real ability, yet it had never been included in the novel. Frowning, he clenches his fist, puzzled by one thing. He had wanted to be rid of it. Yet now, someone had recycled this discarded idea and given it a new life. With hesitation, he presses the buy button, noting that the ability isn't particularly expensive, probably because it was never supposed to be available in the first place. Now he must check his status. Our boy stares at the screen in surprise. A new window with detailed information about him appears, catching him off guard. Strange symbols are displayed next to the abilities. He focuses on the words self-hypnosis and notices a lock icon beside them. Confused, he wonders why the ability is locked and why it is at level 0. Frustrated, our boy hurls his notebook at the screen and shouts. Even if it hadn't been cheap, he wouldn't have bought it had he known. He feels deceived. He sits on the bed, holding his head in frustration. Most people, upon acquiring a new superpower, immediately awaken it. However, in extremely rare cases, certain abilities remain dormant. Lowering his hands, he looks back at the talent list, coming to terms with the reality. He has purchased a dormant superpower. Worse, prices have gone up. For this ability to activate, something extraordinary must happen to him, or he must find a way to forcefully awaken it. Checking his points, he sees that he has none left. He doesn't have enough to purchase anything else. Our boy presses the Earn Points button on the screen. Now, His only option is to accumulate more achievement points. He understands how crucial it is to save enough points to buy a skill that he can actually use. He frowns, leaning on his elbow as he examines a task worth 200 points, writing a love letter to a classmate and getting rejected. His pride kicks in. Does he really want to confess and set himself up for rejection? The idea surprises him, making him thoughtful. He smirks slightly. Perhaps he could give it a try. Switching to another task, he selects the challenge of receiving a confession. The scene transitions to the main street of the temple. Our boy imagines a bustling street filled with people. He explains that this street is part of a vast educational complex, which includes more than just the academy building. Students and civilians alike roam the area, and the presence of a shopping district is entirely justified. He envisions his classmates gathered at a table in a cafe, describing how restaurants, boutiques, game rooms make this district lively. It is the favored spot for the temple's students to spend their time. Kono, sitting at the table, raises his hand and smiles, asking the group if they like the place. He adds that the food is delicious. Kair, however, stares dejectedly at his dessert, arms crossed. He listens as Kono insists that everything here is indeed tasty. Our boy notes that Kono and Kair are commoners, while Leferi comes from a noble background. A black-haired boy frowns. He admits that Kono is right. There's no reason to worry about him. With a playful grin, Kono offers a donut to his sulking friend, urging him to stop pouting and take at least one bite. The group laughs as Kair begrudgingly accepts the treat. Our boy reflects on their friendship. These three shouldn't have bonded so quickly, yet they became incredibly close from the very first semester. He imagines himself in a mirror and muses that he was the catalyst for their friendship. It was all because of the talentless and hot-tempered number 11, our boy. On the very first day, he had sworn like a sailor and even started a fight with a classmate. The conversation continues as the blue-haired guy presses further, asking who they think is the prettiest among their class. One of them confidently states that the princess is the most beautiful. Another quickly dismisses the thought, arguing that she is too far out of reach for any of them. Another classmate chimes in. Ellen, number 2, is really pretty. She is, someone agrees, but she's a little intimidating. Kair, on the other hand, declares, Lady Grant is my type. As they continue their discussion, someone suddenly interrupts them. Kair freezes, worried that they've been caught talking about the royal class girls. The group turns their heads slowly. Standing before them is a stunning young woman with long, flowing blue hair. Kono turns around as a cute girl touches her hair and asks to speak with him for a minute. He frowns in shock and exclaims, asking if she is really calling him. His friends look on in surprise, watching as she invites him to talk outside. Kono glances up at the building against the sky and asks what is in the note she handed him. She simply tells him to read it. As he unfolds the paper, he finds a declaration of love. She then asks if he is dating anyone. Holding the note in confusion, Kono blushes and admits that he is single. The girl, feeling embarrassed, places her hands behind her back and looks away before asking what he thinks of her. Kono, still in shock, turns red and confesses that he also falls in love at first sight. Smiling, she quickly runs ahead, calling back that they will see each other next time. Kono waves after her and shouts that he will wait as long as it takes, and that he loves her. Meanwhile, his friends knock on the window, watching the scene unfold with clear displeasure. Then the scene shifts to an alley. Clothes fall to the floor. Our boy struggles to pull his sweater over his head, breathing heavily. He yanks at it with all his strength and shouts in frustration for it to finally come off. When he finally manages to remove it, he holds it indignantly in his hands. Sitting down on the floor, he sighs and wonders how everything has come to this. Our boy sits in front of the screen, staring at a completed test. Holding his head, he lets out a laugh, relieved that at least one is done. Placing his hands on his knees, he smirks and looks away, remarking that nowhere was it stated that he should be recognized for being wrong. Just then, the system sends a notification, an update to the list of tests. Now, our boy is required to complete every single one. His anger flares. Clenching his teeth, he glares at the screen, seeing a new test, going on a date with Kono while pretending to be a girl. He grits his teeth and mutters, asking if someone is spying on him in real time. Feeling exhausted with life, he frowns, remembering the embarrassed Kono. It seems cruel to make such an innocent teenager fall for a deception like this. Maybe Kono is a little foolish, but he is a good guy. Shaking off his thoughts, our boy slaps his cheeks and closes his eyes, reminding himself that now is not the time to dwell on such things. He needs to focus. He can buy a new talent for 1,000 points. He pokes at the screen absent-mindedly, leaning his head on his hand. Scanning the remaining tests, he realizes that some, like skipping class, could lead to severe punishment. However, there is one test that won't bring consequences, only sheer embarrassment. His eyes land on the test, writing a love letter to a classmate and getting rejected. He exhales deeply, deciding that since he has already sold his soul once, he might as well do it again. The sun sets behind the temple. Our boy walks along the path, stopping at the gate with the letter in hand. He stares at the doors with a deep sense of displeasure, feeling utterly pathetic. He thinks about how, in addition to his soul, he is now sacrificing his dignity as well. Looking down at the envelope, he reminds himself of his goal. He must collect 1,000 points as quickly as possible to purchase a new talent. Carefully, he chooses his target, ensuring that the risk of humiliation is minimized. He is confident that she won't care about him at all, even after this. Our boy opens the door, realizing that even if he is rejected, there will be no rumors spreading about him. Peering from behind the door, he watches as Ellen Artorias strikes a training dummy with precision and force. Our boy enters the training area and sees her wielding the sword, continuing her practice. He frowns and calls out to her. Ellen turns to face him, her expression unreadable. Our boy glances at her sword with concern, wondering if she will use it to kill him when he confesses. He frowns again but reminds himself that achievement points are crucial. It's all for the future. Placing one hand in his pocket, he looks away and extends a letter toward her, stating that it contains his feelings. Ellen, taken aback, accepts the envelope and examines it. He watches as she calmly opens it. Without much hesitation, she refuses and hands the letter back. Our boy, unfazed, opens the door and leaves. Ellen resumes her training, and as he steps outside, he smiles at the notification confirming the test is complete. Exhaling in relief, he hopes they won't cross paths again anytime soon. The plot moves to the next day. The teacher points her finger at the students and shouts that their swings should be sharper. Watching the boys practice, she declares that wielding a sword means facing the enemy directly. If they are this slow, they wouldn't even be able to hit a turtle. Our boy, sweating and frowning, stands next to Ellen, thinking he is on the verge of insanity, while she remains completely unfazed. He lowers his gaze in frustration, recalling the previous day's swordsmanship lecture. Sitting next to her during the class, he had become so frustrated that he broke his pencil, questioning why he convinced himself this was worth an achievement when all he feels now is shame. The lecture and the subsequent practice session on swordsmanship seem like an endless cycle, fueling his embarrassment. The teacher approaches him, snapping him out of his thoughts. She scolds him for daydreaming, declaring that he has become too relaxed. Yelling, she tells him he is hopeless, instructing him to stretch his arms properly, brace himself, and fix his stance. Meanwhile, the assistant teacher scratches his chin, watching Ellen's swings. Laughing, he praises her, saying that her form is excellent, as expected of a royal class student. Even after numerous strikes, her stance remains perfect, reminding him of his younger self. Our boy glances at her with irritation. From behind, the teacher yells at him again, demanding that he stand properly, stretch his arms, and focus. If this were a real battlefield, she tells him, he would already be dead. The boys continue swinging their swords as the woman scolds our boy, while the assistant teacher watches Ellen with approval. The assistant teacher then notes that another royal class student attended the lecture. Holding a piece of paper, he looks between our boy and the instructor, calling him out. The teacher asks if he is from the royal class. Our boy inwardly groans. She just did roll call moments ago. The assistant teacher, arms crossed, suddenly suggests a sparring match between the royal class students. All eyes shift toward our boy, who is petrified, and Ellen, who simply nods in agreement. The other boys sit in a semicircle, eager to watch. Our boy stands frozen, listening to them excitedly talk about how this is a battle between the elite, and how witnessing this fight is a once-in-a-lifetime event. He inwardly scoffs, They are expecting too much. In reality, she will knock him out in less than a second, and they need to stop placing high hopes on this match. The teacher places her hands on her waist, smiling, and tells them that they have plenty of time to showcase their skills. Our boy frowns in fear as she instructs them to get ready. Ellen stands calm and focused. The teacher announces the start of the match. Our boy grips his sword tightly, frowning, gritting his teeth, and wondering why they are taking this so seriously. Suddenly, Ellen vanishes from sight. His eyes widen in shock. Where did she go? Before he can react, she appears before him, swinging her sword. The impact lands directly on his head. He clenches his teeth in pain as she steps forward, sending him flying backward. Dazed, he closes his eyes, looks at his hand, then at Ellen, considering her utterly ruthless. If she was mad about his confession, she could have just said so. When our boy regains consciousness, he opens his eyes and frowns. He finds himself lying on a bed, staring up at the ceiling, fear creeping back as he recalls what happened during the sparring match. Sitting beside him, Ellen listens to his groans. Without emotion, she informs him that he didn't regain consciousness even by the end of the lecture, so she carried him to the infirmary. She then looks at him and casually mentions that it is lunchtime. Our boy, still groggy, turns around and asks if it is already that time. Sitting up, he raises his hand and mutters that he will go get food. Then, to his surprise, Ellen suddenly approaches him. Without warning, she throws his arm over her shoulders. He protests, insisting that it is unnecessary. Ellen, looking down in confusion, grips his hand and states that if he had properly parried her blow, she would have let the sword slide before finishing him with a strike to the neck. She admits she hadn't realized he had no experience in handling a sword. Our boy stares at her in confusion before realization strikes. She is doing this out of guilt. Stepping aside, he raises his hand, declining her support, and clarifies, "Didn't you just say it's lunchtime?" He looks at the girl and suggests having lunch together, convinced it wasn't his fault. Ellen looks down and agrees, and he reassures himself that, no matter how one looks at it, he is not to blame for what happened. Our boy smiles, considering a little payback for the hit on his head. He mentally rejoices at the idea. As he leads the way, he explains that since students from all over the continent come to the temple, the variety of restaurants is vast. He glances toward a tall building resembling a restaurant in the square, mentioning that some students hail from a region called the East, which is practically identical to East Asia on Earth. One of the staple dishes of traditional Eastern cuisine is changukchang. Our boy eyes the table with steaming Korean soup, licks his lips, stirs it, and comments that his mouth is watering. He recalls how he passed by the restaurant last time when he was disguised as a girl for a test. Smirking, he hands a spoon to the hesitant Ellen and encourages her to try it. She sniffs it suspiciously and states that, judging by the smell, it is inedible. Our boy grins sweetly, closing his eyes in mock sincerity, and assures her he would never offer something inedible. Meanwhile, he secretly enjoys the thought of this as retribution for the earlier hit. As she leans in to take a bite, he playfully tells her to open wider, like a train entering the station. The moment the soup touches her tongue, Ellen's expression twists in horror. She winces at the overpowering taste, grips the table. Watching her reaction, our boy grins mischievously, holding his chopsticks. He teases, asking if she would be willing to give her life for something like this. He muses about how she is usually so composed and unapproachable, a dignified, beautiful 17-year-old high school student. But surely, she can't remain that way forever. How naive. As she clutches the table so tightly that it nearly cracks, he silently revels in the moment. They sit at the table, and Ellen hurriedly gulps down water, demanding to know why the soup smells so awful. Our boy, still amused, asks her to at least hold back her strength a little. He scoops up a spoonful, licking his lips, and decides that since justice has been served, perhaps he should try it himself. After all this time, he will finally taste something from his homeland again. However, as he brings the spoon to his mouth, his expression changes. Ellen, reluctantly preparing for another bite, puts the food into her mouth and forces herself to remain composed. Our boy, stunned, he watches her in shock, realizing that she must be so hungry that she is willing to endure the taste. Her expression is a masterpiece of concealed suffering. A cough echoes nearby as they both glance toward the sign outside the restaurant. Our boy smirks and remarks that no one else could possibly devour Chongjiang with both cheeks stuffed like that. He playfully offers her more. Ellen shoots him a glare of pure disappointment and declares that she will never eat it again in her life. He blinks in surprise. Despite everything, she actually ate it all. A voice echoes from the brick building, instructing the students to examine the formula. Chalk moves across the board, sketching intricate patterns during a lesson on magic theory. The instructor explains that the formula must be transferred in a specific way and tested in practice. A blonde student's spirit nearly leaves his body when another student remarks that it isn't difficult and that there's no reason to be upset, adding that from next quarter, the material will become even harder. Our boy touches his face, feeling completely lost. He thinks he might as well quit right now. Just as he prepares to leave, someone asks where he is going. Later, our boy lies on the carpet as an instructor tells him to relax all his muscles and allow the universe to fill his body, part of an exercise in magical receptivity. Our boy peeks through one eye when the instructor suggests ending the session. Others stand before them as the man wishes everyone a magical day. Our boy sighs, thinking everyone was asleep. That must be why these classes receive such good reviews. A sign with arcane symbols marks the entrance to the superpower control class. Roll call begins. A blonde girl named Liana announces her presence, followed by a boy named Heinrich. Our boy leans his head back, exhausted from the endless lessons. His classmate, Kono, loudly exclaims that he is present. Our boy looks up when his name is called, noticing a familiar face he didn't expect to see. Charlotte stands among the students. When her name is called, she responds calmly, looking straight ahead. Electricity crackles in her palm. Standing next to Liana, an excited instructor declares that Charlotte has the best control in the class. Charlotte thanks him as students watch from a nearby bench. Someone suggests she increase the strength of her lightning. Our boy stares ahead, realizing that Charlotte has awakened a superpower, as he considers how not even all the teachers know about her ability. After all, she always leaves with the instructor for private lessons as soon as class begins. Heinrich raises his hands in front of him, fire flickering between his palms. Our boy watches, suspecting that others are not allowed to know about Charlotte's power. The instructor praises Heinrich, telling him he is improving and that they will now test how long he can maintain his flames. Our boy closes his eyes, wondering if Charlotte entered the temple by pretending to have an ability she didn't actually possess. Elsewhere, two students stand on opposite sides of a wall. One asks the other if they want to get pancakes on Main Street for lunch. Meanwhile, our boy wonders whether Bertus knows about Charlotte's ability. Near a wooden training wall, the instructor tells students to practice teleporting in a specific direction. Our boy senses something suspicious. Either Bertus is aware of Charlotte's power, or he has no idea that she might not have had any talent to begin with. A girl turns to our boy and calls his name. Watching the students ahead, she asks what they should do, given their limited options. Our boy exhales and tells her to push him to his limit. A classmate steps forward and wonders aloud what would happen if a superpower only awakened when someone's life was in danger. He then suggests they put our boy in a life-threatening situation. The girl beside him scolds him, exclaiming that he shouldn't even ask such a thing. If that were true, people with superpowers would be everywhere. The instructor tells our boy, while she allowed him to attend these classes, he should understand at this rate, he will achieve nothing. Our boy lowers his head. Sunlight reflects off the windows as he responds that he understands. He realizes he has no other choice. As students walk through the corridor, our boy averts his gaze when his number is called. Behind him, a boy steps forward and sneers, asking if he thinks the temple is some kind of joke. He points at our boy and demands to know why someone without abilities is attending the superpowers class. Heinrich's mouth drops open in disbelief as he repeats the question. Our boy replies bluntly that it isn't obvious. The students all turn their attention toward him as Heinrich scoffs, questioning whether our boy truly believes he can accomplish anything just because of his delusional belief in unlimited potential. Our boy responds that he is here because he feels he has a predisposition for it. The dark-haired student and turns away, warning him to stop attending the superpowers class. He adds a final threat. If he ever sees our boy in class again, he will teach our boy a lesson. Our boy replies that all Heinrich can do is talk. The dark-haired boy turns back around and asks again, stepping closer. Our boy raises an eyebrow and questions why Heinrich thinks his ability is useful when even a simple lighter is more dangerous than the sparks he produces. Heinrich's expression darkens, and he asks if our boy realizes he just insulted a member of the First Dynasty. Smiling, our boy tells him to apologize and reminds him that he cannot use his status to intimidate others. He warns that if Heinrich doesn't apologize immediately, he will report him to the teacher's council. As our boy begins to count, Heinrich clenches his teeth as flames ignite between his palms, demanding to know how our boy dares to speak to him like that. The dark-haired boy steps forward, but our boy strikes him before he can react, demanding to know what he is trying to do. Heinrich touches his forehead in shock and asks how our boy dares to hit him. Our boy calmly replies that it was self-defense. Flames flare up in Heinrich's palm as he shouts that he will finish him off. Before he can act, our boy punches him again and asks if Heinrich really thinks he'll just stand there waiting for that to happen. The students watch in stunned silence as our boy adds that he will slap Heinrich every time he tries to use his superpower against him, and that he won't report him to the teachers because he isn't a jerk. Heinrich stumbles forward and falls face down. Furious, he charges at our boy, hurling insults, but he crashes to the floor once again. Our boy smirks and asks if he really thought that would work. Our boy leans in slightly, pressing down, and questions why Heinrich is targeting someone who hasn't even touched him, when all he wants is to attend classes in peace. Then, with a casual tone, he tells Heinrich that he should be grateful that he hasn't awakened his own superpower yet. The dark-haired boy's eyes widen in realization. Our boy continues, pointing out that, at this moment, Heinrich's superpower cannot even travel 5 meters and takes 10 seconds to activate, making it weaker than ordinary fire, and warns that if Heinrich tries to use his ability on him one more time, our boy will not hold back and will teach Heinrich a lesson that Heinrich will remember forever. Heinrich grits his teeth as our boy asks if he has already forgotten their homeroom teacher's words. Smiling, our boy reminds him to be careful with each other. Later, students sit at the tables during dinner. 2 girls glance at our boy, while the students behind him whisper that they shouldn't look at him. The blonde student glances at Heinrich, but the dark-haired boy quickly turns his head away. Our boy sits in his chair, thinking about how much of a mess this place has become because of him. He wonders if he truly wrote such a terrible novel that every other person here is a fool. Looking away, he considers whether Ludwig will punish him. Just then, someone speaks. "Do you have a moment?" Bertus stands next to him, his gaze steady. He says he wants to talk. On the balcony, Bertus stands while our boy studies him carefully. Bertus looks at him and offers some tea. Our boy nods. He contemplates how Bertus isn't openly hostile but doesn't see him as an equal either. Since predicting his intentions is impossible, relaxing around him would be a mistake. Bertus closes his eyes while our boy wonders what he truly wants, whether he will try to force him into submission, believing he will become an outstanding swordsman. There is no doubt Bertus is up to something. He wears the same deceiving smirk he uses on everyone. Bertus explains that he called him here because he was asked to deal with a local troublemaker. Bertus continues, claiming he speaks on behalf of their entire class. Our boy raises an eyebrow and asks what exactly he has done to deserve such treatment. Bertus imagines him surrounded by red smoke and states that the students are afraid of him. He recalls the red-haired guy and admits he understands why he acts the way he does. Then, picturing the blonde guy, he adds that Kayer is definitely guilty, as he thinks too highly of himself. Bertus closes his eyes and declares that our boy didn't lose his temper because he was personally insulted, but because the honor of the temple was disrespected. Bertus adds that, as a student of the temple, he should treat everyone equally. However, in reality, he should present himself as a patriot of the academy. Our boy thinks the situation is taking an unusual turn. Bertus smirks and tells him that he likes him very much. Sitting in silence, our boy realizes this is the worst-case scenario. Looking ahead, he decides he wants nothing to do with this scoundrel. His so-called patriotism has impressed Bertus far too much. The blonde boy smiles and says he believes our boy is going too far, clarifying that he doesn't mean punching a nobleman. Sitting across from each other, Bertus points out that our boy wouldn't have dared to challenge the Schwartz royal family unless he had backing from others, which is exactly what their imaginative classmates believe. Bertus touches his face and suggests that our boy either wants to avoid drawing attention to himself or is unable to use his family name to conceal his origins. Regardless of whether it is his family's power or personal ability, it still belongs to him. Our boy's face grows tense as Bertus asks how many people have enough influence to walk without fear of the Heinrich family. Our boy quickly denies any affiliation. Bertus explains that many believe our boy is secretly a member of the imperial family. Even Heinrich is beginning to suspect it. But our boy knows that isn't true. He reflects on how imaginative children can be. Bertus's eyes light up as he asks permission to pose a question. Our boy watches him as Bertus asks if he truly has outside support. Crossing his arms over his chest, our boy firmly denies it. Looking away, he adds that he especially doesn't want to be the kind of cowardly, despicable person who throws punches just because he has someone to cover for him. Bertus's mouth falls open. Sitting across from him, he asks if our boy truly has no one backing him and acted purely out of anger. Our boy answers affirmatively. Thinking that Bertus probably doesn't believe the nonsense about him being a secret member of the imperial family, but is definitely curious to know if he's hiding something else. Realizing that if Bertus ever discovers he is an archdemon, our boy will be in big trouble. In that case, he must continue playing the fool. Bertus smiles, then bursts into laughter, closing his eyes. Sitting in front of him, our boy watches as Bertus praises him for answering honestly. He explains that if he had confirmed the rumor about having outside support, he would have simply ignored him. Our boy raises an eyebrow and asks if Bertus understands that he could have lied. Our boy looks at the cup in his hand and replies that anything is possible, but Bertus would never believe that someone who can't even hold a mug properly could be a member of high society. Bertus smirks as our boy contemplates how unsettling he is, considering he even watches how he holds his cup. Light reflects in the window as Bertus tells our boy that if he plans to lie, he needs to do it much better. He then asks if our boy has ever considered that he could easily be disposed of outside the temple for touching someone like Heinrich. Our boy recalls when Heinrich hit him and answers that he has thought about it, but lying to Bertus of the Empire would never end well, and explains that even outside the temple, killing a royal-class student would be unacceptable. If he were killed so soon, it would be too obvious who the culprit was. Bertus smiles and remarks that he could still use his family's power to cover his tracks. Our boy crosses his arms and acknowledges the possibility, realizing he hadn't even considered it before, given that Heinrich has been abandoned by his own family. However, voicing that thought aloud would only worsen things. Bertus smiles and calls it wonderful. Our boy then adds that he doesn't think the Empire would bow to a sovereign nation and that ruining the temple's reputation would have consequences. Our boy watches as Bertus stands up, remarking that, for the first time, he actually likes an upstart like him, and that life at the academy is becoming very interesting. Our boy thinks he can't believe the first person to like him is the main villain. Bertus asks if our boy loves their empire. The boy responds that, of course, he does. Bertus gazes at the moon and asks why. Leaning back in his chair, our boy explains that it's because of money. After all, they let a poor man live in a palace, making him feel like he's worth something. Since he has no reason to hate money, why wouldn't he love the empire? Bertus turns to him and asks again. Our boy replies that he comes from the streets. Bertus turns away as our boy states that if that's enough to make him hate him, then so be it. However, Bertus replies that it's quite the opposite. His eyes widen as he adds that our boy's loyalty is built on clear foundations. Bertus asks if he knows about their hierarchy. The boy answers that there is a queen, workers, and soldiers. Bertus comments that while they may seem divided into simple roles, the reality is far more complex. Some individuals hold greater or lesser roles depending on circumstances. He suddenly exclaims that he doesn't care about any of it. Our boy asks what he means, wondering if he truly finds this a source of pride. Bertus smiles and questions what more he needs to understand, concluding that, in the end, they are all just pathetic ants. He approaches our boy and states that he doesn't care about people, whether they are homeless or commoners, aristocrats or sovereign nation leaders, members of the imperial family, grand dukes, counts, mayors, or barons. Bertus closes his eyes and adds that, for this reason, he doesn't care at all whether Heinrich considers him an equal. It means nothing to him. Our boy looks at him and admits that he makes a good point, though he is surprised he said it aloud. At the same time, he thinks Bertus is a hypocrite. Bertus spreads his arms and declares that this is power, People with power are free to commit vile acts. He widens his eyes and adds that our boy behaves this way despite having absolutely no power, making him different. Our boy glances sideways and responds that all sorts of people exist in the world. Bertus smirks and comments that our boy is quite intelligent for a beggar. Bertus states that, eventually, all of his secrets will be uncovered. Our boy sits at the table and assures him that he wasn't lying about not having abilities and that he doesn't think friendship with him would benefit Bertus. Bertus introduces his classmates and dismisses them as talentless fools, stating that talent alone isn't everything. He smiles and adds that it's far better to use someone who is smart. Sweat appears on our boy's face as Bertus remarks that, given his intelligence, his reckless actions raise many questions. However, considering the conditions in which he lived before, it makes sense. Our boy reflects that he isn't actually a beggar. His origins aren't so different from Bertus's. Bertus places a hand on his shoulder and insists that the essence of his request hasn't changed. Standing behind him, Bertus asks him to control himself. Our boy raises a hand to his face and replies that he will try, but only if he can get along with the others. Bertus laughs and says they will end their conversation there. Bertus looks at him and states that they will have more important matters to discuss in the future once he is sure of his reliability. Closing his eyes, Bertus wishes our boy a good evening. Our boy watches him leave as the crescent moon illuminates the balcony. He mutters that this guy gives him goosebumps, as someone reflects on how Bertus was right. He had told him to control himself. A man grips a sword in both hands, thinking those were definitely his words. Opposite him, another man stating that our boy has no ability and no outside support. Behind the man with glasses, students observe as he smirks, questioning the point of all this hesitation. Our boy clutches the sword before dismissing it, realizing he should have listened to Bertus. The sun shines over a tall building as our boy notes that the long-awaited day has arrived. It's the first day off at the academy, and 2 days have passed since his conversation with Bertus. Our boy places his hands in his pockets, reflecting on how he never actually denied the rumors about himself. While they can't be called friends, he believes they have reached a point where they can at least talk casually. Our boy recalls 2 students and considers how everyone must be saying that Bertus is so kind that he can even befriend a scoundrel like him. If that was his goal, then he truly is a genius. Our boy remembers how everyone moved away from him and realizes that, thanks to these rumors, absolutely everyone is avoiding him, except for Ludwig. He looks up at the shining clouds, thinking that today is a day off, which means there's nothing for him to do in the dorm. He also acknowledges that he still hasn't been able to awaken self-hypnosis and decides that he should visit his guys and tell them about his first week at the academy. As he walks away, someone watches him from behind. Lawyer asks our boy about his life at the academy. Our boy replies that it's not bad. Nearby, Lawyer, standing by the table, mentions that she heard Bertus and the Princess of the Empire enrolled this year. Our boy confirms it, impressed that she found out so quickly, that she asks if it's too dangerous to stay there with them. He replies that nothing major has happened yet, but he thinks Bertus likes him. Lawyer comments that it's already quite dangerous. Our boy remarks that if things go wrong, he can always escape with the help of the ring. Setting his mug on the table, he adds that, if possible, he'd like her to investigate something for him. Lawyer asks what exactly. Our boy introduces Charlotte and states that she probably has a superpower, but very few people know what it is. Lawyer asks him again. Our boy tells Lawyer that there is not need to rush. He just feels uneasy when someone around him has an unknown background. The girl nods and replies that she will contact Sarkar. Lawyer frowns and warns him not to try reaching out to Elaris or Sarkar directly. Our boy's eyes widen as he asks why, noting that it would look suspicious if he were seen associating with people he supposedly has no connection to. Our boy stands behind Jessie as she agrees, adding that he has been followed this whole time. The boy immediately asks if someone is watching him. Lawyer looks down at the steps and notices people quickly walking away. She assumes they are his classmates and advises that they don't need to take any action for now, but that he should be extremely cautious. The crescent moon hangs in the sky as our boy realizes he has been careless, allowing himself to be followed. He has a strong suspicion about why they are doing it. Standing in a brightly lit room, he considers that they probably want to find out what makes him so confident. For now, he decides to avoid meeting Jessie's group, as there's a possibility Bertus could assign spies to watch him. Our boy looks ahead with confidence when someone taunts that the beggar has finally returned. Standing before him are other students. Kayer opens his mouth and mockingly asks if he really spent the day under a bridge with homeless people. Eric then questions whether he is not even a commoner, but just an ordinary vagrant. Our boy shoves his hands into his pockets and casually confirms that he really did live on the streets. Sweat appears on the students' faces as our boy suggests that they are making all these scenes just to mock his poverty. Then Enrich asks our boy that where he gets so much confidence. Our boy remarks that they still haven't calmed down and just keep spouting nonsense. At this point, they're really getting on his nerves. Kayer and Eric look in the same direction as our boy warns that if he were in their position, he wouldn't dare mess with someone like him, especially after learning about his past. The red-haired boy scoffs, questioning what a beggar like him could possibly do to them. Stepping forward, our boy reminds them that they are speaking to someone who has fully experienced street life. Stopping just in front of Kayer, our boy's eyes narrow as he calmly asks whether Kayer is afraid he might be defeated by a beggar if he turns away. Kayer grits his teeth, his fear becoming apparent. Our boy advises him never to antagonize someone with nothing to lose, and then questions whether Kayer truly believes he can get away with nothing more than an apology. Turning his attention to Eric, our boy demands to know if they are waiting for him to apologize. He challenges them to give him even one good reason why he should. Eric, momentarily stunned, asks if he has heard that correctly. His expression twists with anger as he shouts that maybe our boy should apologize, then asks what exactly he can do to them. Without hesitation, our boy grabs Eric by the jacket, points at his face, and coldly threatens him. Eric stumbles backward, collapsing next to Kayer. Our boy glares at them and asks if they truly believe he will tolerate their insults just because they are more talented or come from noble families. Raising his hand to his face, he warns them not to follow him anymore. They can do whatever they want, but if he catches them again, he swears he will teach them a lesson that they will never forget. Our boy pats the dark-haired boy's head and smirks, saying that it should be an honor. The last thing they will ever see is him. He raises his hand and waves, suggesting that if they have so much energy to waste on the weekend, they should at least go outside and kick a ball. After all, children shouldn't interfere in adult matters. Our boy heads for the door and sarcastically advises his classmates to enjoy the weekend. The students stare at the slammed door. Harriet clenches her teeth and mutters that he's insane. A table sits in front of the window as Kayer and Eric continue watching our boy. Lying on his bed, he reflects on how this will now lead to rumors that he is also a bum. He recalls how Burtis asked him to control his temper, but he still thinks it would be best if these scoundrels simply avoided him. Staring at the ceiling, our boy shifts his focus to something more important, figuring out how to unlock self-hypnosis. However, he has no idea what steps to take. A knock interrupts his thoughts. Annoyed, he stands in front of the door and wonders why someone needs him again. Have they been provoked so much that they actually want to fight him? Standing before him is Chloe. He frowns and asks what she's doing here, wondering if she came because she wanted to eat again. The girl and replies that they are being called into the hall. Our boy looks ahead and asks who is calling them. Near the window, students are doing push-ups as Chloe explains that she doesn't know, but it's probably the older students. The blonde girl standing ahead turns to look at our boy and Chloe, asking if they are the last ones. She places her hands on her waist and demands to know why they are just standing there, then orders them to lie down on the ground. She frowns, asking if they are refusing. Chloe remains silent and walks toward the other students. The blonde girl stops in front of our boy and demands to know why he is still standing there. She glances at a trembling student and sarcastically suggests that their friend must have hearing problems. Harriet lifts her head and asks our boy why he isn't following orders. The blonde and commands him to quickly get on the ground and do what his elders tell him. Our boy places a hand on his neck and glares at her serious look. He asks why he should listen to someone as insignificant as her. The girl freezes, then demands that he repeat himself. Our boy stands firm as she asks what he is doing. He smirks and asks if she really wants to know. The girl in front of him starts trembling. Then, he asks what he should do. The blonde clenches her fists and warns him that he should know who she is. Our boy simply shrugs and fires back, asking if she knows who he is. Then, he adds that he doesn't care. Our boy advises her to leave before he flicks her on the forehead. Her eyes widen in shock. She angrily demands to know how he dares to speak to his elders like that. Behind her, the other students continue doing push-ups. Our boy coldly replies that if she wants to be treated with respect, she should act accordingly. Besides, lights out is approaching, and it's time for obedient little kids to go to bed. Furious, she screams that he will pay for this. Then, she vanishes. Our boy turns to the remaining students and casually asks why they're still doing push-ups. Facing his classmates, he demands an explanation. Wondering what kind of nonsense this is, and if they are really trying to claim that this is some kind of tradition for the first years of Class A. Our boy imagines the blonde girl stamping her foot, and recalls that an upperclassman of common origin was assigned disciplinary duties with the first years to prevent students from abusing their status. He assumes that they also intend to warn them not to lose to Class B, as failure would mean the end for them. He envisions the laughing upperclassmen, realizing that their reluctance to share recognition with Class B stems from the pressure imposed by senior students. Meanwhile, he assumes that Class B doesn't even care about such things, most likely spending their time peacefully drinking tea with their seniors. Harriet stands behind our boy, arms crossed. She demands to know if he is prepared to take responsibility for what will happen after his speech. He casually places a hand in his pocket and questions what responsibility she means and what could possibly go wrong. The girl warns him that the elders might come to despise them. Her eyes widen when he retorts that it wouldn't change anything. Their classmates shift uncomfortably as he adds that their studies would continue. They could still sleep at night, and if the upperclassmen resorted to bullying, they could simply report them to the teachers. He then questions why they are acting so weak and whether they are truly that afraid. Harriet closes her eyes as our boy challenges them, asking why an ordinary guy from the streets has more pride than they do. Frustrated, she exclaims that it's all his fault, insisting that she only follows orders and is not guilty of anything. She then threatens that if her training at the temple is ruined because of him. Her eyes widen in shock when our boy questions her. He looks at her with a menacing glare and demands to know if she truly thinks she can threaten him. He mocks her, asking if she believes herself to be a king or a god. Harriet flushes with anger and trembles, stammering in disbelief at his audacity. The doors suddenly burst open as she exclaims that he has become completely insolent. A dark-haired upperclassman grits his teeth and demands to know where the scoundrel who humiliated her is. Harriet points straight at our boy and accuses him without hesitation. He assumes that she dragged her older brother into this because she was incapable of handling it herself. He shifts his gaze to the approaching upperclassman, who coldly asks for his name. A guy with spikes steps forward and declares that he doesn't care about our boy's noble status, claiming that the first year clearly doesn't understand how the royal class is structured. Before he can continue, our boy interrupts, stating that he is not a noble. The guy with spikes hesitates, then repeats his question. Our boy simply looks ahead and affirms once more that he is not a noble. The upperclassman narrows his eyes and asks if he comes from high society, to which our boy responds negatively. The guy with spikes then speculates that he must be from the imperial family, but our boy cuts him off, pointing out that no one ever said such a thing. Our boy gestures toward himself and clarifies that he is nothing more than an ordinary homeless person from the streets, neither a noble nor a member of the imperial family. He then asks if there is a problem with that. The guy with spikes questions if our boy truly behaves this way despite not belonging to high society. Our boy shrugs and counters, asking whether a person's status should matter if they refuse to do something they don't want to do. A guy with spikes clenches his fist before abruptly striking our boy in the stomach. Pain surges through his body, and he grits his teeth, quickly realizing that a guy with spikes is far from weak. Doubling over, he struggles to stay upright as a guy with spikes coldly states that, in this case, a few broken bones might help him understand the rules properly. Without hesitation, the dark-haired upperclassman punches our boy again, explaining that as a student of the royal class, he is expected to follow traditions. Moving swiftly, guy with spikes lands another blow to our boy's chin. Our boy stumbles backward. His vision blurs, but he forces his eyes open and clenches his fist. Seeing the incoming strike, the guy with spikes dodges effortlessly. He then grabs our boy by the hair and smirks, taunting him for daring to fight back. Senior drives his knee into our boy's stomach, calling him a pathetic weakling. His classmates watch the scene in silence, some looking away in discomfort. Chloe remains motionless, observing quietly as our boy struggles to remain on his feet. Senior his fist once more, but suddenly stops, deciding that this is enough for today. However, our boy refuses to let it end there. Ignoring the pain, he swiftly grabs the jewels of the senior. The senior face contorts in agony as he gasps, his breath hitching. Our boy smirks, tightening his grip, and sarcastically asks if the senior is done talking nonsense. Senior is in shock and can't believe what is happening before he lets out a piercing scream, demanding to be let go. Our boy tilts his head and remarks that since Senior asked nicely, he might consider it. Smirking, he warns the upperclassman not to struggle, or he might actually damage these jewels. Closing his eyes momentarily, our boy thinks to himself that this is the extent of what a high school student like his senior can do. Students rush forward, pleading with our boy to stop. The upperclassman, now on his knees, howls in agony, begging for mercy. Our boy chuckles darkly, pointing to the senior who is now compromised state. He then issues a final warning. If anyone dares to take another step, they should be prepared for their senior to never be the same man again. Sweat appears on the faces of the gathered students as our boy mockingly explains the correct way to beg for salvation. Harriet calls our boy crazy. Tears stream down the senior's face as our boy finally declares that this should be enough for him to understand his place. Standing over him, he warns the senior if he ever dares to approach him again, he should be prepared to say goodbye to his dignity. Our boy scoffs, shaking his head at how ridiculous the situation has become. Without hesitation, he kicks the senior and orders him to take his followers and leave. His gaze shifts to the blonde and the other students, questioning why they are still standing there since he has no intention of carrying their defeated leader. Reina closes her eyes in frustration and calls our boy a pervert. He thanks her for the compliment. As our boy turns away, someone calls out to him. He stops and asks if anyone else still hasn't left. A girl steps forward and questions whether he should act a little more nobly. He then asks if she truly expects him to endure such treatment without retaliating. Adriana, standing in front of him, clarifies that she simply wants to talk. Adriana introduces herself as a second-year student and asks if his name is indeed Reinhardt. As the upperclassmen and the others are dragged away, she explains that what happened wasn't entirely their choice. She describes how the tradition has been upheld for generations, with upperclassmen pressuring them to enforce it on first years as well. She notes that Reina, being soft-hearted, likely struggled with hurting others but was forced to participate. Our boy questions why they didn't simply refuse, asking why they agreed to something that hurt others. Adriana introduces the dark-haired boy and explains that if they hadn't carried it out, a third year would have, and upperclassmen often struggle to control their power. That means the consequences could have been far worse. Our boy tells Adriana to tell the seniors to come here. Adriana is surprised to hear this. Our boy states that if her seniors told them to do this, Adriana hesitates before warning him that if he continues like this, he will inevitably get into trouble with the third years. Sweat appears on Adriana's face as our boy orders her to tell the third years to come to him. Not today or tomorrow, but Monday night. A cup is set on a table as Bertus sits in a chair, contemplating. He remarks that they will soon find out if the third years can make Bertus obey them. Holding his mug, he inquires about our boy using his name. Seated across from him, our boy confirms it without hesitation, which makes Bertus wonder why he says it with such pride. Raising his cup, Bertus states that he recently learned about the royal class traditions and had been wondering why no one approached him. He assumes they must have been cautious. He then questions our boy about his decision to invite them on Monday, suspecting he intends to mock him in front of his elders. Our boy replies that there's a high probability they will ignore his invitation, but if they do accept, it will be amusing. Bertus asks what makes it amusing. Our boy grins and explains that he is curious to see if they actually dare to lay a hand on Bertus of the Empire if he refuses to submit. Propping his head up with his hand, Bertus accuses our boy of using his name for personal gain, emphasizing that he referred to him as a prince rather than a classmate. Our boy looks ahead and nonchalantly asks if that matters, while internally debating whether he should activate the ring and escape. Pouring himself more tea, Bertus muses that the traditional punishment for such a transgression would be the extermination of 3 generations of his family, though he would prefer to avoid that. He then wonders if it would be fair to use our boy in return, since our boy had used him. Our boy introduces Charlotte, prompting Burtis to acknowledge that he has crossed paths with his half-sister in some lectures. Our boy takes his cup with both hands and agrees when Burtis asks him to keep an eye on her and report anything unusual. Burtis then questions whether our boy has improved his behavior toward his classmates. Our boy replies that by his standards, they have managed to get along. After all, he even saved them today. Walking down the hallway, our boy recalls how he had insulted Harriet. He also remembers Burtis commenting that it wasn't exactly friendly to call the Duke's daughter that, leading our boy to suspect that Harriet had already gone crying to Burtis. As he moves forward, he notices her standing nearby. Harriet looks at him, closes her eyes, and chuckles. Our boy catches her subtle reaction and unexpectedly blushes. He finds himself thinking that, despite her noble status, her childish reaction makes her incredibly cute. Unable to hold back, he calls out to her. She turns to the side, visibly flustered, and demands to know what he just said. Standing in front of her, he repeats the name he had called her. Harriet picks up her cup as our boy admits that he said it absent-mindedly, but she has already managed to turn it into a conflict. He repeats the insult, causing her to slam the cup down on the table. Standing in front of him, she accuses him of trying to provoke her and use his status to punish her. He dismisses the idea, claiming it never even crossed his mind. Covering his ears, he complains that she is yelling, finding the whole situation amusing. Harriet, frustrated, demands to know why he is doing this to her and what is wrong with him. She stands behind him as he comments that her reaction changes every time, and if their roles were reversed, he wouldn't pass up the opportunity. Harriet's face turns red when he suddenly calls her cute. He repeats the word. Harriet clenches her fists as he casually states that even if she is some kind of genius, children will always be adorable. Adding to the teasing, he smirks and tells her that she should go to bed soon, or she will never grow up. Standing in the hallway, Harriet struggles to process his words, wondering what kind of nonsense he is even talking about. On Monday, students gather outside Class 1, calling for our boy. Gloves are thrown onto a table as someone declares that he has ruined the upperclassman reputation. Upperclassman announces that, to restore his honor, he is officially challenging our boy to a duel. Upperclassman looks at our boy and asserts that he may choose the time and place, but an observer will be present to ensure fairness. Our boy calmly points out that his senior yesterday had no issue trying to defeat him up before. Only now, after being humiliated, does he seek a fair fight. Looking away, our boy questions whether they weren't the same people who silently watched the senior, ignoring their difference in strength, attempted to injure our boy severely. The senior smirks, declaring that if our boy refuses the duel, it will prove that he can only win using tricks. The two stare at each other in silence before our boy finally accepts. With a serious look, senior states that it's great. He only hopes our boy remembers one thing. Burtis smirks as the senior vows that this time, he won't fall for any cheap tricks. Raina gets worried seeing this. The senior concludes that he will not back down simply because our boy is weaker. Our boy places his hands on the table as the upperclassman tells him he will explain what it truly means to be under the authority of his elders. On the stairs, a girl approaches and asks if he has any free time. He turns to her and asks what she needs. Raina stands beside him as he mentions that he still needs to stop by the homeroom teacher before his next lesson. She immediately exclaims that now is not the time to relax, reminding him that the senior is a second year out of 3. She then questions whether he understands the danger he is in and if he is tired of living. Our boy dismisses her concerns, stating the senior isn't going to kill him. Raina, clearly frustrated, insists that our boy has already declared he has no talents or abilities, making his decision to fight even more senseless. Clenching her fists, she pleads with him to simply apologize, explaining the upperclassman has agreed to forgive him if he sincerely asks for forgiveness. Our boy turns away from her and shrugs, saying that life is just like that. If he is destined to get hit, then so be it. Descending the stairs, he reflects on why he agreed to this blatantly unfair duel. It's not because he's reckless or foolish. His true goal is to push himself into a high-stress situation in hopes of unlocking self-hypnosis, his only potential talent. As he imagines the system window displaying abilities, something begins to materialize in the interface. He refuses to let this ability remain locked away forever.